Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadaria Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zadaria Enterprises would like to remind you that we are single-handedly holding back the deer revolution. You can pay us in order to make more of the deer crackers that keep them sated. Enlist today against the deer army.
So, some of you might be looking at this and going, wait, I thought you guys were supposed to do Gubat Bunwa today. And yes, that was the plan. But this is why every wrestling promotion always says cards subject to change. As I pointed out a few hours ago, earlier today, in fact, right this morning, I caught wind of the fact that the Quickstart for Shadowscar, which we had originally planned to cover a week ago, is now out in the wild. They had said mid-July. I figured I'd have at least another week beforehand, but I guess not. I'd imagine I imagine that Zan and I weren't the only ones bugging about when the Quick Start was going to be on Drive-Thru-RPG.
Yep.
But I said that once it went live, we were going to cover it. It has now gone live, so cover it we shall. It is amusing that it is referred to as easy mode in the name of the PDF. This is following up on the easy mode quick start for Cyberpunk Red. I know some of you are thinking, shouldn't it be called journalist mode then? And thank you for joining the temple, the lollygaggers. But we're not going to call it journalist mode because, if I'm being honest, journalists don't deserve this.
It's not like it's actually easy enough for them to get through anyway.
No, it actually involves reading.
Mm-hmm. Remember, jump and then dash, Dean Takahashi.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get past that obstacle in Cuphead.
But the quick start, and I'm going to be calling it that just out of habit. I know it wants to refer to itself as easy mode or whatnot. I'm calling it a quick start because, one, habit again, and two, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it sure as hell ain't a goose.
Yep.
So, I will note this this PDF is 68 pages long. We are probably only going to be going into the first 44 pages because the remaining pages cover the starting adventure. There's going to be some degree of skimming, but nothing too major.
Yeah. As you know, we usually don't go into the actual quick start adventures featured in these types of quick start documents, and we tend to skim over a lot of the lore stuff because much of it isn't mechanically relevant. Though I will admit that much of the lore, as we've seen from things like the Dicebreakers article and interview regarding all of this, was explored pretty much, while not in depth, pretty well as an overview, a vertical slice, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So, definitely recommend that everyone and anyone interested in this game from the mechanics we'll be discussing today, you go to DTR and you get yourself a free copy. Remember, it's Shadow Scar, Eyes in the Darkness.
Mm-hmm. And I should note, for those of you watching on YouTube, the link for the PDF is in the description. And for the rest of you, it's easy to find. I'm just not going to post the link on Twitch because Twitch gets spastic about posting links in comments. And unfortunately, there's no description on Twitch where I could post it there. So, with that said, I do see at least one familiar face, and that is Matt Click as one of the editors.
Yep.
I think somebody really understood the assignment with the cover, by the way.
Yeah, that cover's fucking baller.
Yeah, but Eyes in the Darkness. Although if that cover art is used in the full game, honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised.
I don't think it would be used as the cover art, but I could see it as insert art somewhere in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely like that we've got the full gamut of ideas here. Like, we know that this was going to be East Asian inspired along different lines, especially. But we've got like a straight up, what looks like a Western spy fiction guy with a cyborg arm. Is that just supposed to be a Bato XP? I kind of feel like that's a Bato XP.
Is it a Bato XP if he doesn't have the eyes?
Yes, because he's still a big muscle man with fair hair. I don't see a ponytail, but
I was gonna say he looks more like Van Hohenheim.
I mean, that's also true, but that definitely, especially with that cyborg arm, it definitely invokes more Ghost in the Shell than Full Metal Alchemist.
Well, the Pondsmith family couldn't escape their roots.
This is true. I actually, I mean, especially since he's using a gun, that's the big reason I'm thinking it's more like noir, future noir in that particular pose.
Mm-hmm.
But I really love the fact that Sokka now has some sort of superpower. And no, you cannot tell me that guy at the top is not Sokka. Fuck you all. If you try to tell me that's not Sokka, I don't give a shit, that's Sokka.
Mm-hmm. But right after that is the first section, Welcome to the Agency. And as an aside, I do appreciate that the PDF is chock full of bookmarks.
Yes. Very nice. We love bookmarks.
So it's very clear that the Welcome to the Agency part, and I'd say a good amount of the fluff, is meant to be written as if it's being narrated by Fugenbo the Sage, who's basically this Tengu looking guy in a very non-Tengu-esque outfit.
Mm-hmm.
explaining things like the Veil War and the Shadow Scar and the different worlds, as well as the Shadow Scar Agency. Which, should we go over this or should we skim this?
Personally, I think small things here and there would be fun. But I think that reading each of these are all rather short. I think we should do them.
Yeah. In that case, I'll let you open up, and I'll take over when you get to the Veil War.
All right. Welcome to the agency. And yes, Fugenbo the Sage is definitely a Daitengu. And people may be asking, what the fuck is a Daitengu? Well, there are two types of Tengu. Karasu Tengu, the ones that look like crows and are covered in black feathers. And Daitengu, the guys with the big red noses and skin and also having wings.
Mm-hmm.
Daitengu are technically a different version. There isn't a clear hierarchy. Sometimes they're seen as the superiors, sometimes they're not. But they're both guardians of the gods and protectors of certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
You look a little lost. Perhaps you're wondering what you've gotten yourself into, stepping out of your reality into something so unfamiliar, confronted by a being of such luster as myself, and unsure of your place in this wider world you never could have imagined. Luckily, Director Yamana has sent me, Fugenbo, the Weaver of Lost Tales, to enlighten you, to raise you from the depths of ignorance to the peaks of understanding. So, let us begin, shall we? I know your story. Going about your life, minding your own business when suddenly something terrible creeps into your cozy corner of reality. Dark shadows at your window, a monstrous cry in the night, perhaps a crime too hideous to describe. You were at the wrong place at the wrong time and you saw something you shouldn't have. And rather than forget, you chose to embrace your curiosity and join us. Well, of course you did. The Shadow Scar Agency is the greatest fighting force in the mosaic, after all. Our eyes are everywhere, scouring existence for the monsters lurking in the darkest corners, creatures banished long ago, resurfacing now to corrupt worlds beyond our reality. Our agents leap through the veil to protect people like yourself from dangers you could hardly comprehend. Each agent is trained in ancient techniques by ninjutsu clans and taught mystical mikyo by illustrious daitengu, such as myself. He even points out he's a daitengu. That's nice. You saw a glimpse of that training, didn't you? The flash of an arrow through the air? A dark figure emerging from the shadows? Or perhaps you witnessed something more raucous? A breath of red fire, beast summoned from thin air, lightning cracking the sky! You usually aren't supposed to put on a show, but sometimes one must call upon greater powers. But what is all of this, you ask? Be patient, and I shall tell you a tale of spirits and monsters, of the 100 years of sorrow, and the Veil.
And then we get to the Veil War. Once there was a world called Nakasukuni, a peaceful land created by the Komamatsu Kami, the first great spirits of the land. This lush paradise was home to not only humans, but to magical spirits called kami, as well as fantastical creatures called yokai. But as it so often goes, tragedy came to Nakatsukumi. The great mother spirit Izanami perished giving birth to the spirit of fire. Blinded by grief, Izanami's husband, Izanagi, traveled to Yomi no Kuni, the afterlife, to retrieve her spirit, but he was too late. Izanami had already been claimed by the afterlife, and she could only return with the permission of the ruler of the dead. But the ruler of the dead had other plans. They deceived Izanagi and corrupted Izanami, transforming her into a monstrous shadow of her former self. Izanami swore that she would return one day to destroy all that lived, and unfortunately she made good on her promise millennia later. When Izanami returned, it was with a wrath the likes of which had never been seen before. She brought with her an army of twisted souls and horrible monsters, and she used her connection to Nakatsukuni to twist the minds of the yokai and bend them to her will. She only had one goal, the destruction of all life on Nakakatsukuni. Nakatsukuni.
Nakatsukuni.
The The next century was one of near constant war in which the forces of life itself fought against the corrupt power of the afterlife. Millions died, and Nakatsukumi was nearly destroyed. In the end, the kami resorted to their riskiest scheme, to wound Izanami and banish her into the void. And so, in the midst of the final siege of Kyoto, Izanagi battled his fallen wife for the last time and cast her into the void through a shadow scar. But things are rarely so simple. When she was banished, Izanami and all of her monstrous minions were scattered throughout the mosaic, a vast web of worlds interconnected by some unknown force. Izanami disappeared, likely recovering from her wounds, but her minions began to cause chaos in the many worlds of the mosaic. When the kami realized the consequences of their plan, they sought to create a force who would stop the yokai and ensure Izanami never returned. This force would become to be called the Shadow Scar Agency, an order of shinobi pulled from many worlds and trained by the 6 great clans of Shadow to deploy across the mosaic and bring an end to the yokai threat. This is the Veil War, and it rages still today.
I really like that they took at least part of the creation myth of Japan and used it to set up this war. That's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we get to the picture that we saw. We actually saw this picture on the Dicebreaker article. It says sunrise over Kyoto. I'm almost sure those are wisteria now. That's a giant wisteria tree.
Yep.
But this is a description of Nakatsukuni. Nakatsukuni is a tragically unfinished world, tattered scraps of a beautiful yet incomplete painting scorched by war. All that remains is an archipelago, countless sundered islands shrouded by resplendent flora, teeming with diverse fauna, and marred by terrible scars. Fragments of earth float high above the crumbling remains of mighty walls and towering spires of wood, stone, and ice, which mark the ancient sites of apocalyptic battles. Long ago, there were lands beyond the horizon, where the sun sets, but they were lost to time and calamity. Now all that remains beyond the swirling aquamarine sea is a roiling expanse of tar and black storms. The people of Nakatsukuni are split into 3 cultures. The Empire of Nihon, who occupy the majority of the islands. The seafaring kingdom of Ryukyu, spread across many of the tiny islands at the southern end of the archipelago. So we've already set up Japan and Okinawa, got it. Mm-hmm. And the Ainu people who control the shattered fragments of the island of Ainu Mosir. Well, the three native ethnicities of Japan. Very cool. These people were created by the spirits who built Nakatsukuni, and each culture worships its own clan of spirits. This connection with the spirits is paramount, especially now as humanity creeps out of their walled cities with hope of reclaiming the overgrown ruins.
I do like that each world has its own symbol that we see in the art.
Yeah. Well, like, I really like that Nakatsukuni's is that crescent moon with... Except it's a crescent moon facing upwards. It's... If we're being honest here, it's It's straight up just Sailor Moon, Mark.
Oh. Then we have the Steel Court. I must say that of all of the infected worlds in the mosaic, Steel Court is perhaps the most riddled with contradictions. It is a world where science is said to be the order of the day, quote-unquote, but people routinely hold seances for fun, where there seems to be an invention for every woe, but still hundreds die in the streets every day. I find this world baffling and fascinating in equal parts. It is easy to describe Steel Court as a bustling, industrious world when looking at its infected region. The Grand Victorian Empire is an ever-expanding mechanized nation that sprawls across the world. Its banner flies over more than a quarter of the land on Earth, and is constantly testing the boundaries of its neighbors. To stoke the fires of industry, this empire of steel and steam uses the poor and the helpless, running them ragged in factories, mines, and quote-unquote dust yards. But even with all this horror, the Steel Court is a realm of wonders. By harnessing the Stuart steam turbine engine, fantastical inventions are patented every day, and rich blue bloods patronize artists who create awe-inspiring works of art and culture. However, across the empire, rebellion is brewing. It's only a matter of time before the people rise up, assuming the empire's protectorates don't revolt first. So London calling.
I mean, I was about to say, Victorian Empire of Man, is that you? It's a quarter of the world covered in this? Like, yes, the British Empire did span over a quarter of the world, but they actually mean the mechanized part is spanning a quarter of the world. Then we go on to Fifth Street. I really like its symbol being dice.
Dice
in the middle of a revolver in the middle of revolver chambers. That's pretty fucking cool. At first glance, you could be forgiven for assuming that Fifth Street is the most, quote, mundane, end quote, of the worlds currently explored by the agency. Steam-powered robots don't lumber in the streets, magical spirits don't run tailors' shops, and no one lives in outer space. The infected region, the United States of America, is apparently much as it was in the early 20th century in refuge. The people are recovering from what they call the Great War. Moral panic is rampant, and crime is everywhere. But look closer and you will see what makes Fifth Street by far the strangest world the agency has yet discovered. If you walk the streets late at night, you might catch a glimpse of a masked vigilante leaping across the rooftops. Following the sound of welding torches and tools, and you might just stumble upon a basement inventor putting the final touches on their experimental laser rifle. Yes, if you stand still for long enough anywhere in Fifth Street, the once mundane becomes fantastical. Hundreds of larger-than-life stories playing out as you watch. Even the world itself plays to these stories as if some unseen being were directing the world like a motion picture. The sunsets are picture perfect. The rain falls perfectly to highlight a sorrowful moment. And if you listen closely, you can hear the drips, drops, clangs, and hisses of the environment itself forming music.
One would think, from appearances, Fifth Street is trying to be the Roaring Twenties. In reality, it is trying to be pulp storytelling personified.
I was about to say it's Sin City come to life.
Although, given the remarks of a vigilante, I have to ask, what evil lies within the hearts of men?
Monk. Nobody's gonna get that but me.
Well, to the people who don't get it, I have to say, become more cultured.
Or, as we are more likely to say, get good. I believe Refuge is yours, Monk.
Yep. Refuge, which depicts a very a very futuristic city. It has a interesting emblem that is almost depicting kind of a solar pattern.
I was gonna say that looks almost like orbit patterns between the moon and sun.
And yes, the obvious shadow reference is obvious. How could I not? Anyway, Refuge. When we banished the yokai and Izanami to the void, we didn't know what would happen. We only knew we couldn't survive another year. I asked director Al-Hashim how many humans perished when his world was blighted. He told me the number was too vast to even comprehend. But I prefer to focus on the resilience of the human spirit. In Refuge, humanity avoided extinction through their foresight. To my amazement, the last remaining humans in Refuge live in outer space. The ingenious natives of Refuge built a tremendous station floating in orbit around the moon, many satellites, and a luxurious lunar colony. Granted, their intention was never to live in space forever, but humanity persisted, and now they live in relative comfort. Under the watchful eye of the lunar government, the people work hard during the day cycle and cut loose when the night cycle comes. I've personally spectated spaceship races, gone to virtual reality theaters, and walked the streets looking up at the curve of the Eos station's crystal clear ceiling. The culinary artists of Refuge have even found ways to make the meager ingredients formed from greenhouse towers into delicious meals. Still, Refuge is a tenuous place. One malfunction could kill millions and push humanity to extinction.
Refuge is a humanity fuck yeah story personified. This is just Builders in the Void anime style.
And
I'm not even joking.
Remember, there is There is the Virgin Nihilist, and then there is the Chad, Power of the Human Spirit.
Virgin Nihilist, Chad Existentialist. And I'm talking about real existentialists, not somebody like Sartre. Sartre was a dick. Mm-hmm. But so was Simone de Beauvoir. They're both shit as philosophers.
Mm-hmm.
But then we finally get to the Shadow Scar Agency. I really like this picture. This is a combination of temple and castle with both modern and traditional influences, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Origin. When I joined the agency, it wasn't even called Shadow Scar. No, we were the Order of the Moon. Tsuki no Kawate Oshiokyo. I'm going to continue referencing Sailor Moon. Or, for those of you who don't watch it in Japanese, in the name of the moon, I will punish you. There you go. No, we were the Order of the Moon, the secret police of the Empire of Nihon. Wait, fascism, is that you? No, we don't use that buzzword here. We operated under the moonlight to spy on radicals and dispatch threats to the Empire's safety. Though this does sound like the KGB. When the mosaic was discovered, we were tasked with fighting the Veil War. We changed our title to the Order of the Shadow Scar in honor of the black rifts we had to jump through before the Kami created the gates. As we grew and evolved, we learned from the people of the mosaic. Our order, quote, modernized, end quote, and we changed yet again to the Shadow Scar Agency. Our goals are simple, but unfortunately difficult to act upon. We are tasked with protecting the mosaic from the displaced yokai and with finding their mistress, Izanami. While the lower-ranked agents patrol the mosaic, solving crimes, foiling plans, and assassinating key yokai, the highest-ranking agents perform perilous dives into the mosaic, searching uncharted worlds for Izanami. I would say that the agency prides itself on its efficiency. In general, agents of Shadowscar are deployed into a world in teams of 2 to 6 to scout out trouble or to put a stop to it. To avoid causing a panic or making more enemies, these teams are sworn to secrecy. They must complete the missions without letting the natives of the world learn about the Veil War, the yokai, the Mikyo, or the Mosaic. Still, considering the power of fear, hatred, and vengeance, agents of Shadowscar are held to strict moral standard. Crimes such as harming innocents are harshly punished. Our leader is Director Toshiro Yamana. He was one of the 4 shinobi who helped banish Izanami and has been a shinobi longer than most agents have been alive. You wouldn't think much of him at first glance, though. He's an elderly man with a hunched posture, a gray beard, and a voice like the crackling of fall leaves. Still, no one doubts his leadership. Director Yamana may be old, but he is still as clever as a fox.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a one-page spread of the 6 major clans.
I'm going to alternate them?
Yeah, I do appreciate that each of them has their own clan mon.
Yeah, those are some really cool kamon.
Mm-hmm. So first we have the Arashi clan. It is no great secret that in war there are no rules. No, when your life is on the line, any opportunity is golden. The Arashi understand this, using the variety of dirty tricks, their insidious curses, and powerful Mikyo of the Storm. The Arashi are known for being fierce battlefield warriors and cunning saboteurs. Oh god, it is the crab and scorpion in an unholy union.
Oh god, we have to. Are we going to match every one of these to L5R clans, Monk? I have a feeling we are. Oh god damn it. Okay, the Futsumashi clan. The Futsumashi are spiritualists and warriors who seek to live in harmony with the world. I wonder who that sounds like, Monk. They are taught deadly weapon techniques but swear to never draw their weapons unless it cannot be avoided. Instead, they use their ocular Mikyo to see the unseen and influence those around them towards peace and harmony.
Dragon.
Yeah. Also, if we're going to be even funnier about this and do you know what, Monk? We should also do a Naruto reference. Since, ninjas.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the Hyuga clan.
Yeah.
because of the eye techniques and how they influence things.
Hmm.
Definitely not the Uchiha clan, because they were not torch beasts.
No. Oh. So next we have the Hibana clan. The Hibana strive to be prepared for any occasion, carrying tools and practicing a variety of Mikyo brought from the many clans. This fact can make them quite hard to summarize. However, they are most known for their mastery of fire and all that it brings. Smoke, ash, and sparks are all weapons of the Hibana. Unicorn.
Yeah,
The whole variety, taking notes from a variety of sources. That is very much
Yeah.
unicorn. These ones I would associate with the Uchiha. Even their and I think that was the intent given their Mon design.
yeah, yeah. Next, we have the Kuromaku clan. Kuromaku literally means blanket of darkness. The Kuromaku are, of course, greatly influenced by their leader, and so they are trained differently than other shinobi. Kuromaki are trained in infiltration and assassination. Similarly to the secret agents of refuge, the Kuromaku are taught to blend in and manipulate their targets with powerful Mikyo charms. So these guys are basically traditional ninjas, for one.
Yeah.
Which means you can't compare them to a single clan within Naruto.
Yeah, and as far as L5 are, the closest would be the Shoshiro family of the Scorpion.
Yeah.
They are the most even though they don't call themselves ninja, and in fact calling them that is a good way to get yourself stabbed.
Stabby doom.
Or more likely poisoned in your sleep. They are they're the most traditional in the shinobi sense.
Yeah.
But next we have the Tante clan. The Tante's focus is not in fighting yokai, but in freeing them from yomi and recovering those corrupted during the war. Their training focuses on infiltrating dangerous locations unseen and collecting information. Where they are trained in combat, it is usually only to protect themselves from danger.
That's a hard one.
There's not really with both Naruto and with L5R. There's not really a one-to-one.
Well, especially considering that the only beasts that are magical and potentially corrupted are the 10-tailed beasts in Naruto. Mm-hmm. I like the direction of this clan, though. I like the fact that it's like, well, the yokai were corrupted by Yomi itself. So we're trying to cleanse them and purify them. Fuck. I do have a comparison, Monk.
What?
And it's a good one. This is just Amaterasu in Okami.
The fact that the Mon design has those knots, I forget what the name of
Tomoe.
Yeah,
those are called Tomoe.
Well, not
little
not
tear-shaped Tomoe.
But look at the outer end of things.
Oh, you mean the ropes with the prayer strips? Those are called shimenawa.
Yeah, that's very much what it's trying to evoke there.
Yeah, that's a barrier. It's a barrier that keeps stuff out and keeps stuff in. The Tomoe and the Shimenawa, Tomoe are usually associated with divine lightning, and so divine lightning is used as a purification in almost all of East Asia. And the Shimenawa are meant to keep things pure or keep things safe. So, people, all of you understand that the Pondsmith family, that we have made numerous references to them being a bunch of weebs, really are a bunch of fucking weebs. Because I could keep up with the fucking nuances here. Monk can keep up with the nuances here. We're like, oh god, these are our people.
This is a bit cheating because it's referencing a whole different anime, but the way the description is made here, I'm almost thinking of the Sumimura family from Kekaishi.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to make an alternate choice, Sainome clan, as described in Mononogatari,
Yeah.
where what they do is they either seal away Tsukumogami to send them back to the side of death, or teach them to integrate with human society, depending on how aggressive or amenable they are. It's a very interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the last clan, the Wanami clan. While their talents are not as varied as their allies, the Wanami excel at hunting yokai. Members of the Wanami have learned hunting techniques from as far away as Ainu Mosir and the kingdom of Ryukyu. Often, the Wanami even go out of their way to train a beast of the land to be their hunting companions.
In L5R, there's not exactly a parallel. I mean, the whole excel at hunting yokai, you could maybe associate that with the Hida family of the Crab Clan.
Maybe.
But as far as a Naruto equivalent, there is a very obvious one, and that's the Inuzuka family.
Yep. Kiba and his whole family.
Yep.
And then if I want to go outside of the two things that we've chosen as the main references, I'm just going to point to this and say Monster Hunter.
Yep. So
it's just Monster Hunter.
As an aside, I do appreciate that the borders have a different color for each section.
You mean kind of like what we're doing?
Yeah. I saw one comment on the Drive-Thru RPG link that said that this looked like someone took a trading card and then put the text in that with this design. I honestly don't mind this setup.
I don't either. It looks fucking dope.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who would complain about it, I don't care.
But right after that, it goes into playing a role-playing game. Obviously, that stuff we're skipping.
Yeah. It talks about things like, what's the game, what's a character, what's a storyteller. I don't think we need to go through any of this. It also has a sidebar about Session 0.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Apparently, and we actually have sidebars that are the scrolls, which are commentary from Fugenbo. He has a little scroll here that says, I found that you never truly realize what it's like to be yourself until you are stripped of your identity. I remember my time under the thrall of Izanami well, my consciousness suppressed and my body moving of its own accord, puppeteered by some foul force from beyond the grave. I believe the only reason Susanoo was able to free the Daitengu is our strong wills. Which is a pretty cool little part. And here we also move into the character sheets, and they're obviously, because this is a quick start, we have pre-gens. I think we could go over at least the basics of these sheets.
Mm-hmm. I'd say so.
So there's some various things like your name and your background and the fluff and roleplay narrative parts of being a character. They all exist. But then you've got things like your rank, which is your status within the it's basically your levels, I would say, in this game.
Mm-hmm.
How many requisition points you have and what your status is. Beyond all that, you also have a wealth stat. It looks like an abstracted way to kind of... abstracted wealth is a really good way to do things in roleplay, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I know some people like concrete wealth, and hey, that all the better to you. Not my way of playing, and not wrong. Neither side is wrong.
When you're dealing with goods across multiple dimensions, I think abstracting it is somewhat called for.
Yeah. I just find abstracting to be easier to handle, and it doesn't bog down gameplay.
That, and I don't find the idea of trying to simulate a in-universe economy to be all that interesting.
Yeah.
Because, now, Grant, do I have an economics background? Yes. My players don't.
Yep. Not all players can track that sort of shit. Not unless they're like the old, not unless they're like the old school players of games like Masters of Orion or EVE Online.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna. But 4X games have a high floor for a reason.
Yep. But then there's other statistics that aren't part of roles. They call it the secondary statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And then the primary statistics are a very, very recognizable dot, or in this case, diamond system. And I'm sure we'll get into it later, but it seems like is even in the Dicebreaker article, wasn't it a dice pool system that we were working into here?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So your attributes and the skills that are a part of them, your statistics and skills, are tracked as dots, and they are going to make up your D6 dice pools, which is nice. List of weapons. We have
handler
place
and homeland abilities I find interesting.
Yeah, you have this homeland and clan, the symbol of your agent's homeworld and clan, that will go up on the side. As you can see with the example, who is also the first in the list, Aisha Sarikaya. She's clearly from Steel Rain, and her clan is the Tente clan. That's... Okay, goddamn, that is slick. That's fucking slick. At a glance, you can tell where they're from and who they are. That's cool. Then we have a checkbox for when you use a connection to Inyo, which we'll get into later in mechanics. There's a list of techniques, a list of the Mikyo, your handler and homeland abilities, as well as any positive and negative attributes called quirks, which have a mechanical component to them as well. And then weapon traits and a personal inventory.
Yeah, I think the weapon traits is just there as kind of a cheat sheet for the traits of what weapons you're equipped with
and what they can do.
In Aisha's case, her having a dagger and a whip.
Yeah. Her dagger has highly concealable and precise, and her whip has highly concealable, grappling, and reach, and all four of those are listed under weapon traits. Yeah. The same goes for Atsuko, though. She has a greatsword, which has heavy strike, parrying, and two-handed. And it shows those three weapon traits, plus a weapon trait for unarmed weaponry. Tooth and claw. And I really like Aisha Sarikaya is from Constantinople, so she's Turkish. Don't I mean Istanbul? No, it's still Victorian England. Atsuko is if we just look at the worlds they're from, Aisha's from Steel Rain. Atsuko is straight up from Nakatsukuni, excuse me. Whereas Carmen del Rosario is from Refuge. And she has her twin spirit swords and a great spirit sword. Hugo Roth is from 5th Street. Osamu Okada is also from Nakatsukuni.
Oh god, Hugo Roth is he's Imperial German.
Yep. You were 19 when the Great War broke out and you enlisted to fight for the fatherland. No wonder he's got blonde hair and blue eyes. That's a bad joke on my part. And then we have Satoshi Asano, who's also from Nakatsukuni, and that makes him even more like Sokka. So, fuck y'all. Got a chain, sickle, and dart guns. It's pretty cool. But yeah, there's 6 really cool looking pre-gens here, and I don't think we need to go into the details here.
Although I'm not entirely sure if it was if it was the best idea to put the pre-gens right in the middle of the PDF.
This isn't in the middle. This is still near the beginning, Monk.
Point is, this is a habit of mine. I prefer the pre-gens in the back.
I can understand that. I think this is actually a pretty good design in my opinion, because this gives you you've gotten all the cool lore stuff about the world, and now you're getting people who are from parts of these worlds, and you get to see how their homeland and their clan may affect their characterization, how their character is built, and how their character may act, and what their kit might be. And like, people reading through this are going to look at things like the techniques in the Mikyo and be like, "Oh, those are cool. Well, how do I use those?" And they're going to go right past the rest of the pre-builds and hit the how to play. I actually think this is a huge deal to have this as a lead-in to how to play, because that sounds like a fucking great way to whet someone's appetite before they start eating the main dish.
Mm-hmm. But then we get into how to play.
All right. So now that you know the basics, we should go over the rules of Shadowscar. In the interest of keeping everything fair and letting everyone know where they stand, role-playing games use rules to quantify character abilities, blah, blah, blah. We all know about that. But resolution in Shadowscar uses pools of 6-sided dice. Every character has a statistics and skill. Their statistics show you how good they are inherently at certain things, and their skills show you what they're trained to do. Each statistic has a value from 1 to 3, and each skill has a value from 0 to 3. Anytime you must do something that could result in a significant failure, you must make a check. Only complex tasks require a check. We already know about all that sort of thing. When you make a roll, you roll your skill base, which is a pool of dice equal to your statistic plus your skill. Okay, makes sense. Successes are anything greater than 3, and any dice that rolls a 6 is 2 successes. So, pretty standard fare as far as dice pools go. Mm-hmm. If the number of successes you get is equal to or greater than the difficulty value of the task, you succeed. And that also makes sense.
Pretty much. What we have here is a mix of elements between Shadowrun and with a little nod to World of Darkness, in the sense of success bases, but 6s count twice.
Yeah. Well, and it in games with these types of dice pools where you have take stats, take skill, add together, rolled dice, number of successes determine success or failure. That's a very intuitive and beginner-friendly system. Mm-hmm. Extremely. I mean, and the skills, I think, unlike in games like Shadowrun or Vampire, where
out of hand.
Yeah. Well, not only that, I have seen in some cases Shadowrun storytellers or Vampire storytellers match an attribute with a skill weirdly. It very much looks like the skills and the stats are a little more straightforwardly rigid. Like, under mind, we have awareness, disguise, engineering, knowledge, marksmanship, and medicine. Mm-hmm. Under body, we have athletics, endurance, maneuver, melee, stealth, and strength. Some people might be like, why is stealth under body? Because you have to move in a certain way to be stealthy. If this game had a dexterity and a strength attribute, that might be under a dexterity. You never know. But since it's just body, and it's the whole mind, body, spirit 3-in-1 concept. Goddamn, I love Buddhism. Just putting all of that under body makes sense. Mm-hmm. And under spirit, we have artistry, insight, focus, manipulation, performance, and resistance. So I think the way they're columned there, I think that also means that's the stat that you're going to match with the skill. There may be a way that maybe a player could argue, well, I think in this case, body would be more appropriate for resistance. For example, let's say they're using resistance to try and resist someone tying them up. But that could just as easily be athletics or maneuver or endurance. There are tons of arguments I could make. Yeah. Put it that way. But it very much looks like your skill and your attribute, there's going to be no question. You're going to be like, I need... The storyteller may not even said, I need a body strength check from you. They may just say, I need a strength check from you. You go look at body and strength, add them together, roll your dice. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely love the simplicity of being able to just look and intuitively go, this many dice, let's roll it. Anything 3 and up is good. Mm-hmm. That is for some people who may like to meme about it, that is unga bunga brain friendly. But the next part we get into is the Inyo. I mentioned that earlier. There's a box on the character sheet to check when you've communicated with Inyo. The world of Shadowscar is being pulled in 2 different directions by 2 great forces of nature. Each side can exert power, but neither can exist without the other. When you fail a check by 1 success, so you have 1 success less than you need, you can call on the powers of this Inyo, granting yourself the 1 success needed to change the failed check into a successful one. Alternatively, you can use your connection to Inyo when you successfully strike your target to deal an additional 3 damage. However, when one side pulls, so does the other. Mark your connection to Inyo. As long as your connection is marked, you cannot call on Inyo's powers. The mark is only cleared when the other half of Inyo is exerted. This happens at the storyteller's discretion. When you succeed at a check, or when an opponent strikes you with an attack, the storyteller can activate Inyo to reduce your number of successes by 1, or cause the opponent to deal an extra 3 damage. When this happens, you remove the mark on your connection to Inyo. That... I don't think I've seen
I have.
This is the closest thing I can think of here is Doom Dice.
In Doom Dice in what?
Brain is dying. Go with your example first, Monk.
The light and dark side point dichotomy in the FFG Star Wars trilogy.
Okay, I can see that. I don't know if it's exactly the same though.
In the sense that one side is granting a resource to the other that can, and vice versa. That is where there's the similarity. If you roll a number of force dice at the start, which determines which is based on how many players there are at the table, and of course the GM adds 1 to that pool, and that determines how the starting spread of light and dark side points. When the PCs spend a light side point, it gets transformed into a dark side point, and when the GM spends a dark side point, vice versa happens.
Yeah, I feel like this is a little more different from this fact because it's almost like you start in a state of balance. Let's call it that, and then you borrow from one side to shift balance in your favor. But since you've borrowed, you still have to pay it back. I don't know. The idea behind this is, how is this going? Like, this isn't going to get a rainy day paradox because I almost understand that people might be at first a little apprehensive about using Inyo, but when they really need that in the clutch moment success, or it's just a few more damage that's going to take out whoever you're killing, they're going to spend it. And they're going to spend it after considering, is this something drastic enough that it needs to be spent on it? So it's very much a risk versus reward gameplay. It's a risk and reward gameplay. There is a risk that no matter what, in the future, something is going to come back and hit you. But beyond that, really fun.
Yep.
You go ahead, Monk. I gotta get my food from the door.
So, next we have opposed skill checks. If you're attempting to do something that opposes another player NPC, this is an opposed skill check. If you've seen opposed rolls in any game in the last 50 years, you know how this works. Then we have bonuses and penalties, which is basically adding dice or subtracting dice. So, standard fare on that front. And, of course, rounding. Whenever you're called to divide a number to an uneven sum, always round up.
Roundup is nice, I think.
Then we have the difficulty values. 1 is simple, 2 is average, 3 is challenging, 4 is difficult, 5 is master, 6 is heroic. Although I do have to
They have some good examples there.
Yeah, the description for heroic amuses me. Ducking into cover from an explosion behind a barrel while your hands and feet are tied.
That's a very specific example, and that's good guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that lets you know exactly how heroic is heroic. And it's like, you're tied up, certain doom, you need to get in cover, heroic.
Mm-hmm. But then we have commerce. In general, money is treated loosely in Shadowscar. Agents are generally able to requisition the goods they need for their missions and return them at the end of the mission, allowing them to customize their gear for the mission at hand without having to assemble an armory of highly specific tools they have to keep track of. But agents do have their own finances, which inform how they live outside the agency and allow them to buy new gear permanently and use their cash to solve problems during a mission. All this revolves around an agent's wealth rating. Then we have disposable income. At the beginning of each month, a character receives a certain amount of disposable income with which they can add items to their personal inventory, pay for expenses on missions, and perhaps bribe guards. This pool of wealth is equal to double the character's wealth rating. Funds from this pool can be used to buy items in the same way that you would requisition them. When the character has used all of their disposable income, they still continue to live at the standard of living determined by their wealth rating, but they can no longer buy items or use their wealth rating beyond basic living expenses. Any disposable income not used by the end of the month is carried forward for the next month. In certain circumstances, you may be called upon by the storyteller to spend disposable income on things like tickets to get into a venue, a bribe to get past a guard, or a hotel room adjacent to your assassination target. In these cases, the storyteller will tell you what the cost is before you spend it. In most cases, the cost will be 1 point of your disposable income, but it may be higher depending on the situation. And then we have the 6 ratings of standard of living. 0, you have no money and no home, you sleep on the street, you wear whatever clothes you find, and you beg or steal to get food. 1, you are just scraping by, you're renting in a cheap apartment or tenement, you wear cheap or secondhand clothing, and you can only afford to buy the cheapest food and drink. 2, you're getting by just fine. You rent or own a decent home or nice apartment, wear decent new clothing, and can afford to feed yourself and treat yourself from time to time. 3, you have savings and make good money. You own a nice home, can afford to dress well, and have the money to eat at classy restaurants or buy high-quality ingredients. 4, you are notably well off. You have a large, luxurious home in a nice location, a wardrobe full of nice, well-made clothing, and can afford to eat at 5-star restaurants or hire a private chef to cook for you on a daily basis. 5, you are independently wealthy. You own a mansion staffed by servants, get your clothes hand-tailored, and can go out to 5-star restaurants when you aren't having your staff of private chefs cook for you. And there's a sidebar about using wealth. Purposely, wealth is left vague in Shadowscar. With every world having their own currency, it would be a lot to ask if you were to keep track of how many US dollars you have compared to British pounds, compared to Nihonjin yen and lunar credits. We suggest that you keep wealth loose in your games as well. There's no need to give characters a dollar value for anything. Using disposable income should cover it.
Indeed. And we even have a sidebar from Fugenbo. Personally, I never had much need for money. I own very few items, and those things I do have were given to me willingly. Save perhaps for some things taken during the time I was not in my right mind. Humans, on the other hand, are always concerned with money. As director Al-Hashim says, every person has a price for which they'll betray everything they believe, and this price is not always monetary.
Why am I hearing Ted DiBiase's theme?
I don't know, Monk. Why?
And especially his laugh.
I can't imagine why, Monk.
Yep.
But with that, we move into social actions. Whenever you want to convince someone of something or influence their emotional state in some way, you can use social actions. This is a contest of mind and spirit where you are trying to impose a mental state on your opponent to influence them. Either way, you must base this influence on manipulation. Social actions aren't magic. Even after influencing the target, they still remember you and influence them, and you can't convince them of something utterly unbelievable. The storyteller can always refuse a social action to manipulate someone in a way that wouldn't be possible without magic. Using social actions, whenever a character attempts to influence another character, they must use a social action. Outside of combat, the flow of conversation dictates how often and when social actions are taken. If the storyteller determines you are trying to influence someone, they can have you make the appropriate social action. In combat, things are more structured, and characters must use an action on their turn to use a social action. Different social actions require a character to roll different checks, and most of them offer multiple options. Unless otherwise stated, a character defending against a social action can use either their focus or resistance skills. Removing a mental state isn't automatic. On their turn, an affected character can use an action to attempt to roll an average 2 resistance or focus check. If the mental state the character is suffering from is the advanced form, the difficulty rises to difficulty 4. Penalties from mental states never apply to the checks made to remove a mental state. And each mental state must be removed separately. That's actually a good thing to clarify. That whatever penalties the mental states are giving you don't apply to the check you're making to remove the mental state. That is absolutely a great clarification to put in there. Alternatively, another character can take an action to make a manipulation check to attempt to remove a character's mental state. This check is made at the same difficulty as the affected character's resistance or focus check. We have social actions, charm. Using an insight or performance check, you attempt to make the target think more highly of you. If you beat the target's defense, you improve the target's impression of you and gain +1 bonus to convince or charm social actions against them. Alternatively, you can take a -2 penalty on your check to instead make a powerful positive impression on the target and gain a +2 bonus to convince social actions against them. And we have convince. Using a manipulation check, you attempt to make a target agree with you or do something for you. If you beat the target's defense, they are willing to agree with you or do what you wish as long as you provide some sort of proof or do something for them in return. Alternatively, you can take a -2 penalty on your check to instead cause the target to agree with you or do as you ask without prompting, but they may change their mind or won't go out of their way. We have dishearten. Using a manipulation check, you attempt to make a target question their own abilities. If you beat the target's defense, they suffer a -1 penalty to checks made with a skill of your choice. Alternatively, you can take a -2 penalty on your check to instead lower the number of actions the targeted character can take on their turn to 1. That's interesting. Taunt. Using a manipulation or performance check, you attempt to enrage a target and make them act without thinking. If you beat the target's defense, they take a -1 penalty to all checks other than melee and marksmanship. Alternatively, you could take a -2 penalty on your check to instead cause the target to use all of their actions to attack you until they recover from this mental state. There's taunt, Monk. The actual taunt. We have threaten. Using a manipulation, strength, or melee check, you attempt to make a target fear you. If you beat the target's defense, they take a -1 penalty to any checks required to oppose you. Alternatively, you can take a -2 penalty on your check to instead force the targeted character to flee from you and stay away from you. Then another sidebar from Fugenbo. Never underestimate the power of words. You need not have magic words or incantations of ancient magic. Regular words will do fine sometimes. Why, in the last siege of Kyoto, when our plan was set into motion to banish Izanami, Director Yamana and his team were only able to distract Izanami for so long by the use of words. You see, as powerful as the kami are, they are still susceptible to a barbed wit and silver tongue. I like Fugendo's little interjections. They're fun.
So then we get to infiltration, which is one of Stealth mechanics is one of those things that some games have struggled with. There comes a time in most missions where manipulation won't cut it. Hopefully this is where infiltration comes in. It's easier to cover up unexplained disappearances than an Oni, hurling cars down in downtown Los Angeles. When it comes to infiltration, there are 3 key concepts to keep in mind: vigilance, special senses, and awareness conditions. Well, first we have vigilance. In Shadowscar, there are numerous hidden objects, traps, and enemies which lurk in the shadows. An agent has to be vigilant if they are going to survive. That being said, the storyteller is not required to prompt a player to make an awareness check to spot things in the area, unless it would be the result of an opposed check. The player must choose to take a skill action to search for non-obvious clues or traps. If a character who is trying to move or act unnoticed comes within the line of sight of another character, they must immediately make a stealth check against the observer's awareness check to remain hidden. Each time they act or move within line of sight of that character, they must make a successful stealth check. And we have a sidebar of running a stealth game. In some ways, Shadowscar runs counter to what many people are used to in tabletop role-playing games. You are indeed playing a hero, and your achievements can be grand and far-reaching, but you must remain covert. If you kick down the doors of the casino guns blazing, you're going to wind up in a lot of trouble. Some players find this easier than others, so it's a good idea to emphasize the stealthy nature of this game. You can even present the maintenance of stealth as a challenge of sorts, like you might see in a video game. Can your players complete the mission without ever raising the alarm? If so, you give them something small as a reward, like temporary extra requisition points. So this is the case where stealth is not optional for this mission.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have special senses. Some characters have augmented senses, which makes them far more perceptible than the average human. Below you can find the 5 special senses. Keen smell can pick up trace scents that other characters might be unable to pinpoint. They gain a +1 bonus to awareness checks, and if something within 30 feet of them has a familiar or potent scent, they immediately sense it. Keen hearing. They can hear the smallest sounds from a greater distance, +1 bonus to awareness checks, and can perceive anything that makes any amount of sound by sound alone. Additionally, the character is still alerted by weapons with the loud trait, even if they were fitted with a firearm silencer. Motion sense. A character with motion sense can feel the slightest vibrations in surfaces and distinguish where they originated from. They automatically treat any character or object which is touching the ground within 30 feet of them as perceived. Night vision. A character with night vision does not treat characters in areas of dim light as obscured, and only treats characters in total darkness as obscured. So it's low light vision instead of full dark vision.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a part of me that wonders if this is operating under Chronicles of Riddick rules. It's the low light vision, i.e., would they get fucked over by a flashbang?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm GMing and someone brings that up to me, I would say yes, they're blinded because the whole thing with night vision is just increasing the threshold of light that you're able to see.
Yep.
And the problem is that works both ways.
Yep. That's why wearing nods when a flashbang goes off is bad for you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just regular sight with a flashbang is bad for you because it's a flashbang.
Mm-hmm.
It's just significantly worse because it's like staring right. It's like staring right at directly at a searchlight on full blast.
Yep.
Let's see. And spirit sight. By taking an action, a character with spirit sight can perceive things in the spirit world for 10 minutes. However, while using this sense, the character takes a -1 penalty to awareness checks when dealing with things in the material world, as they have a hard time determining what exists in the spirit world and what exists in the material world.
That's pretty fun.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, we have the awareness conditions. There are 3 conditions in Shadowscar which function a little differently than others, like burning or bleeding. These are awareness conditions which denote your relationship to another character. technically, there are two conditions which necessitate the presence of a third, hidden, which is when you cannot perceive something or don't know it's there. Obscured, which is when you can barely perceive something or you can't, but you know it's there, and perceived. I know it would be very tempting to make the Metal Gear Solid comparison when it comes to these levels of awareness, but I'm going with Tenchi instead.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's more fitting. Also, Tenchi's use of ki I always found interesting.
I think you mean Tenchu.
Tenchu. Yep. Then we have combat, and I'll let you take that.
Okay. Something I do want to remark on just before we do pass from infiltration, though. In this game, stealth is not a passive thing. You don't roll your stealth check and then wait for somebody to beat it with their spots. It's an active thing that has to be rolled every time you're trying to hide in front of something that can potentially perceive you. I love that. Active stealth. It's active stealth mechanics, meaning people aren't just going to roll and ignore. So we have combat. Sometimes negotiations fall through, and stealth isn't an option. When a furious Oni is charging at you and all your attempts to soothe the savage beast have failed, it's time to fight. Agents are trained to be skilled and resourceful, able to use everything at hand to their advantage and adjust to dangerous situations on the fly. To reflect this, combat in Shadowscar carries a greater level of depth than social manipulation and infiltration. Each combat is broken down into rounds, 6-second increments, which each member of the combat can move a distance equal to their speed and take 2 actions. There are a number of different actions that can be performed, and each one has a different effect on the combat. When everyone has taken or forgone their actions, the round ends and a new one begins. We start with initiative. To determine initiative, the character with the highest awareness skill base in each group of allied characters makes an awareness check, and these results are ranked from highest to lowest, with ties falling in favor of the players. Each time the initiative order comes around to a group, the group can decide in which order they'll take their turns. Each character in the group gets a turn in which they take their actions. So this is what we've been doing with Sword World the entire time. This is what Heavens and Heresies does with the whole party leader thing.
Mm-hmm.
Although Heavens and Heresies alternates one turn or certain turns with other turns a little bit differently. But this is basically whichever group rolls highest gets to go. They then determine the turns between each other, and then you switch over to the other side. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Ambushes. When a group of characters tries to ambush their enemies, the character with the highest stealth skill base must make a stealth check against the awareness check of the enemy with the highest awareness skill base. If the stealth check fails, initiative is established as normal, and combat begins. If the stealth check succeeds, the defending characters cannot take actions and treat the ambushing characters as hidden during the first round of combat. That's a very specific way to ambush, and I like the specificity. It being that specific lets you know, hey, if we're trying to ambush, well, whoever has the highest stealth, roll. I'm going to roll the awareness for these enemies. Oh, you won? Okay, you're now hidden to everybody for this first round, and they can do nothing. Mm-hmm. That's cool. On player turn, movement. By taking a movement action, you can move up a distance equal to your speed. If you want, you can split your movement and take some of it before your actions and some after. For example, a character with a speed of 30 feet could move 5 feet, take an attack action to kill a guard, move 10 feet to a door and take a skill action to unlock a door, then move 15 feet through the door. While in a vehicle or mounted, you use the vehicle or mount's speed instead of your own speed when determining how far you travel with a movement action. If you board a mount or vehicle as part of your movement, subtract the distance you already moved before mounting the vehicle, or mount from its speed before continuing to move. Oh, that's cool. Normally mounting or dismounting would be an action for one. And for two, you'd just lose out on some of the speed of the mount straight up without doing anything. But instead it's like, oh, let's say you're mounting a motorcycle, which has a speed of like 200 feet in 6 seconds. And you had to move 10 feet to get where. It still has 190 feet it can go in your turn.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking cool. And it doesn't seem to spend an action. Climbing, leaping, and swimming. When climbing, leaping, or swimming, a character spends 10 feet of movement for every 5 feet they move. So, half movement for climbing, leaping, or swimming. That's fairly straightforward. There's none of that stupid derived statistics bullshit from multiple attributes that we hate from the world's most litigious game.
Mm-hmm.
Moving through characters. You can move through the space of a willing character automatically. If you attempt to move through the space of an unwilling character, you must make an athletics or strength check against their melee or strength check. If you fail, your movement is stopped and the rest of your movement is lost. Unless otherwise stated, a character cannot attempt to stop the movements of a vehicle or mount and must instead make an athletics check against your maneuver check to dodge. If they fail, the character takes an amount of damage equal to half the maximum vitality of the vehicle and suffers the prone condition. There's a fun one. You move 10 feet to get on the motorcycle, charge somebody with the motorcycle, and hit them with it.
Yeah.
That'd be...
You know, it's not like Dante had an entire devil arm dedicated to vehicular combat.
Cavalier is godly, and the combos with it are fucking... They're clean. They're so clean.
And if you think
Chainsaw motorcycle.
If you think it's cheating that I'm using Cavalier, fine. I'll invoke Transformers Devastation. Which everyone should play. And if you're a Transformers fan, you have even less of an excuse to skip it.
Yep. Then we get on your turn actions. On your turn, you have 2 actions which can be used to perform any of the 15 actions detailed in this section. All characters are capable of taking any of these actions. Aim action. Focus your next attack action on a vital location. If your next action is to take a strike or perform a Mikyo that targets a single character and deals damage, you can make a single melee, marksmanship, or focus check at a -1 penalty to deal 3 extra damage and cause the targeted character to suffer the bleeding condition. So you get a -1 penalty that gives you extra damage and a condition by using aim.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. Ability/technique action, which is just the action that it allows you to use an ability or technique that you have access to. It's fairly self-explanatory. Analyze action. Attempt to study a situation or your surroundings and get a clue as to how to proceed. The check required for an analyze action is determined by the storyteller, but is most often a knowledge check with a difficulty set by the storyteller. When you take this action, you must specify what you are analyzing and what question you are seeking to answer. If you succeed at the check, the storyteller will give you a clue on how you should proceed based on what you can observe. Hint system.
Yep.
And it's a fairly...
Sierra strikes again.
Well, and this one's a fairly focused one. It's like, okay, what are you looking at and what are you trying to answer? If you don't have those 2 parameters, you get no answer.
This also
and
means
even if you
don't have the spot check problem.
Exactly. Like, the assassinate action. Oh, man. If you are considered hidden from your target, or they do not suspect you mean them harm, you are within 50 feet, and you are unarmed or wielding a weapon without the loud trait, you can take an assassinate action to silently kill them. To do so, you must roll a stealth check against the target's awareness skill base. If you succeed, you instantly kill the target without alerting anyone who wasn't directly observing them. Let me just state that one more time. If you succeed, you instantly kill the target without alerting anyone who wasn't directly observing them. If person A is the person you're assassinating, and person B is not looking at them, and you succeed at that assassinate, this person drops dead, and person B is none the wiser. If you fail, you deal no damage and are perceived by the target and any characters in the area. Additionally, this scuffle begins to attract attention. If the combat isn't ended in 3 rounds, any allies of the targeted character in the area arrive on the scene and enter the initiative order. At the storyteller's discretion, these characters might raise the alarm, alerting everyone in the area. If a player character or an NPC with a threat rating above rank 1 is the target of assassination, the character attempting to assassinate them must roll a stealth check against the target's awareness skill base to initiate the assassination with the same result for a failure. However, if they succeed, they must then immediately make a marksmanship, melee, or focus check depending on their chosen weapon against their target's athletics or melee check. If this check is a success, the target character is reduced to 0 vitality. If the check is a failure, the failed state of the standard assassination still occurs. If a character is suffering the paralyzed condition, you automatically succeed any necessary checks to take the assassinate action. Mm-hmm. So, if an NPC is above threat rating rank 1, then not only do you have to make sure that you have stealthily approached them well enough to kill them, but you also then have to make the attack check anyway, otherwise you may still miss.
What we have here is a way of expediting assassination of mooks.
Mooks or high-value targets that aren't combatants.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that wealthy magnate who's actually funneling money into the local terrorists to get to lower land prices so he can buy that uranium mine.
Mm-hmm. Awful specific, but I'll allow it.
I literally made it up off the top of my head. If it has a resemblance to anything else from any other stories, that is completely coincidental.
All I thought of was the origin story of why Frieza is what he is, according to
Because he's a land magnate.
Yeah,
Yep.
because Toriyama wanted the most vile thing he could think of, and that was what he came up with.
Mm-hmm.
In his defense, it was the 80s, and real estate prospectors were a problem back then.
If any of you have ever played Yakuza 0, you know that in the 80s, land sharks were a thing.
Mm-hmm. But
Before we go much further, I do want to address something Art Tabletop said about the difference between force points and Inyo. Force points were a group resource. Inyo is a player-by-player resource.
yeah, I was saying the trading principle is the connective tissue.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. Just wanted to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
But the next action is yours, Monk.
All right, attack action. Make a single attack with up to 2 weapons you are wielding. Oh, so we have built-in dual wielding rules.
Nice. No pay not to suck, Monk.
Mm-hmm. Or with 2 unarmed strikes against up to 2 characters. So we have built-in cleave too. Within range. To do this, you make either a marksmanship or melee check for each attack against the same number of athletics or melee checks from the targeted character. On a successful attack, you may apply the effect of the attack. There are 3 different attacks: strike, shove, and disarm. Strike, subtract damage from vitality. If the target has armor, subtract the armor from the damage first. Unarmed strikes deal 1 damage. Shove.
So we have soak in the form of armor.
Yep. Shove. Move the target up to 15 feet away from you in any horizontal direction, or cause them to suffer the prone condition. And disarm. Force the target to drop an item they have on their hands. You can either take this item if you have a free hand, or knock it up to 15 feet in any direction. This would be a great way to screw over somebody who just pulled the pin on their grenade.
See, if I were going to do that, what I'd instead do is knock them prone while they're still holding the grenade. And then get the fuck out of Dodge.
Mm-hmm. Oh, who am I kidding? You'd probably sneak up on somebody and plant the grenade in their pocket.
Stealth explosive is my favorite build in Fallout 3. How did you know?
It's not like there's an entire stat called exploding pants. But I like that with the attack action, there's a bunch of different options that are built in that in plenty of other games would have been their own options that you had to pick.
I like the fact that the attack action is a single action that allows you to do 2 checks at the same time. Not only do you get 3 very cool tactical options, whether it's just use your beat stick, push someone away, or disarm them, it's also, hey, you can do this twice for a single action.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Dash action, move an additional distance up to your speed. Right. Defend action, defend yourself from attacks, gaining a +1 bonus to all defensive actions until the beginning of your next turn. Alternatively, you can defend an adjacent character. Whenever someone makes a physical attack against this character before the start of your next turn, you can make an opposed melee check against the opponent's attack check to negate it.
Defend has built-in cover. That's great.
Yep. Grapple action. use a free hand or a weapon with the grappling trait to grab a character within range. To do this, you make a melee check against the targeted character's athletics check. On a successful grapple, the target suffers the grappled condition. When grappling a character, you can drag them with you when you take movement actions or perform the following special actions. Choke. The Atlanta special. Attempt a melee or strength check against the strength or athletics check of a character you are grappling to choke them, dealing 1 damage which is not lowered by armor. After 3 successful consecutive choke actions, the character suffers the asleep/unconscious condition. Pin. Attempt a melee or strength check against the athletics or strength check of a character you are grappling to cause them to suffer the pinned condition. Or throw. Attempt a melee or strength check against the strength or athletics check of a character you are grappling to throw them up to 15 feet in any direction. The thrown character takes 1 damage and suffers the prone condition. Los Tiburon strikes again.
I hope that there are rules for throwing a motherfucker at another motherfucker.
Or just rules for wall banging.
Mm-hmm.
Not like you'd know a thing or two about that.
Nope, not at all. It's not like I'd push people 5 squares into a wall just to make sure they took all 5 squares of damage or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's after I hit them with, the big hit in the first place.
Yep. So then we have the help out action. Aid another character, giving them a +1 bonus. Only one person can help out unless otherwise determined by the storyteller, and the storyteller can always determine that a character cannot effectively take this action. Quick note regarding grapple. It's amazing how many games have a grapple action but don't have anything for throwing the target you're grappling.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it's either
at least this one does.
Pin.
Yep.
I mean,
at least this one does.
Yeah, if somebody's doing grapple, they want to wrestle. And if you want to wrestle, you want to throw somebody.
Mm-hmm. Or suplex them.
Yeah.
Can't ever go wrong with a suplex, Monk.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just ask Taz.
Mm-hmm.
But, see, then we have the item action, basically using an item. Picking up, dropping, drawing, or stowing an item can all be done without using an action. Thank God.
Oh. Man, I can already hear tactical purists going, "But don't you take time?" Yeah, you're a ninja, though. Have you ever watched ninjas in any fucking ninja fiction ever?
Yeah.
The needles, the kunai, the smoke bombs, they all come instantaneously to hand through sleight of hand. There's no delay. Fuck you.
Plus, while some may argue that delay is realistic or whatnot, putting aside my issues with the realism trap, it also ends up discouraging people from messing around with their equipment. This is another reason why say the fighter being able to wield any weapon doesn't have as much appeal when it takes so much work to switch weapons.
Quote the best thing that epic rap battles of history ever came up with. We all know the world is full of chance and anarchy. So yes, it's true to life for characters to die randomly. But newsflash, the genre's called fantasy. It's meant to be unrealistic, you myopic manatees.
Mm-hmm.
But,
I know that some take the wrong interpretation about the whole fantasy is supposed to be unrealistic, but it's a pendulum affair.
Yeah. This game is already heavily outside of the realism bubble. Diving into alternate realities and different universes that have been infected by Yomi and the yokai therein. There's already magic and kami and all this other shit. And you want stowing and putting and drawing items to cost an action? Fuck you.
But after that, we have the preparation action. And hello, welcome to the show, Dawn's Herald. This is technically the second time we've talked about Shadow Scar. We just have something tangible to talk about instead of reading off an article.
Yeah, last time we did the Dicebreaker interview. This time we're doing the quick play.
Mm-hmm. Prepare an action for later in the round. To do this, you declare the action you are preparing and a circumstance that will trigger it. For example, if the Kappa tries to attack the witness, I'll shoot them with my pistol. If you don't use your action by the beginning of your next turn, you lose that action. If you want, you can use both of your actions to prepare 2 separate actions with 2 separate triggers. I do want someone to use a preparation action that is basically them going, next you're going to say...
Hey, so you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Let's see, recovery action, center your mind and regain 1 point of your spent ki. Glad that's there because I looked at the low amount of ki that characters have, and I'm like, I hope there's a way to get it back quickly, and looks like there is.
Yep.
Hydra, one of the mantras that we have here is believability over realism, i.e., you will believe that a man can fly. But then we have skill action. Use a skill to do something that could feasibly be done in 6 seconds. If you want to do something that requires more than 6 seconds, you can split the task across multiple rounds. In this case, you must be able to devote all of the required rounds before making the check. So then, social action. Use one of these social actions on page 26. We already covered those. Alternatively, you can make a resistance or focus check to attempt to remove a mental state you are currently suffering. I didn't see anything about reactions, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't see any reactions either. I think it is just you do your actions on your turn, they do their actions on their turn, and that's that.
If anything, I'd say that their reactions are probably going to be limited to character-specific abilities, you know, techniques and all of that jazz, or we're going to have a situation where the action that's taken prompts a certain role as a response by default, which we kind of already saw in some cases.
Yeah, but with that we get to action Mikyo, and Mikyo seem to be your ninja powers.
Mm-hmm.
They cost ki. Pay the ki cost of a Mikyo you know to perform it. The resolution of a Mikyo can vary. In most cases, the Mikyo is cast and the listed effect happens, lasting until the end of the duration, or until the agent chooses to dismiss the Mikyo. Alternatively, a Mikyo might directly target one or more characters. If a Mikyo targets a character, you must make a focus check opposing your target's defense check. If the Mikyo targets multiple targets, all targeted characters defend against the singular focus check. That's nice. You roll one focus check, they all have to roll defenses.
Mm-hmm.
To properly perform a Mikyo, you must have both hands free. You can perform a Mikyo if you have only one hand free, but you take a -1 penalty on the associated focus check. And Mikyo are separated into your ranks, Genin, Chunin, and Jonin. A Genin Mikyo costs 1 ki, a Chunin Mikyo costs 3 ki, a Jonin Mikyo costs 5 ki. Then we have this really nice diagram of a thing I have been practicing with my hands since I was 12. They call this the 9 hand seals of ninjutsu. And if any of you have seen, what was the ninja movie? Ninja Assassin, I think it's called?
Yes.
Where while he's healing, he's making these 9 hand signs to make himself heal faster.
Mm-hmm.
If any of you have seen Ninja Assassin, you're familiar with Retsu, I believe his name was, and the 9 hand sigils he was making. Now, or mudra, if you want to call them by their proper name in Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
Mikyo are secret technique taught by the shinobi clans, which are powered by ki, the life force of the user. Every living being has ki, but to perform Mikyo, the user must have an excess reserve of ki, which is not common. It takes weeks of training to develop enough ki to perform Mikyo. Once a ki reserve has been built up, the agent has to learn to channel it. Naturally, ki circulates through the body, so agents are taught to gather their ki using the Kuji-in, the 9 hand seals. Now, this actually is the proper name of these 9 hand seals, the Kuji-in. It stands for the 9 cunning seals, and it is a Buddhist purification rite used to cut away impure spirits and purify a funerary site, usually. Asking me why I know all this. Again, I said I've been doing this since I was 12. It actually helped with my hand limberness, my minor dexterity. You know, the minuscule miniature dexterity you need in your hands. I still do this as an almost subconscious habit randomly all the time. I'm sure you saw me do it a few times when we were at Cowtown a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just will randomly start doing this.
Mm-hmm.
They are taught to associate certain Mikyo with different seals to create a muscle memory, which makes it easier for the agent to perform the Mikyo. And each of the Mikyo are given, or each of the Kuji-in are given different meanings here. Rin, the beginning, is empowerment. Hyo is given control. To is given movement. Sha is given healing. Tai is given perception. Jin is given connection. Retsu is given manipulation. Zai is given vocation. And Zen is given concealment. And these hand seals are... they're old. They're really old. And I have been making them with my hands since I was 12. 24 years doing this, people. So I can go through this really quickly. But if you've ever watched any Buddhist videos of this, they go through it way faster than I ever could, to be honest.
What?
Way faster.
What, like 3 seconds?
Well, the Kuji-in is a mantra and a mudra. You do the mudra with your hands, and then the mantra is In-gyo to sha kai-jin retsai zen, and you just continue to do that. It sometimes for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes for hours as a form of meditation as a Buddhist monk. And they will do that as naturally as they breathe, as fast as they are chanting. Even I sometimes have problems doing it as fast as I chant.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really cool. I am so fucking stoked that they put this in here. Like, mm-hmm. I came down here and was like, we scrolled down. I'm like, holy shit, it's the Kuji-in in the back of my head. Yeah. I'm like, what's this doing here? Mm-hmm. I know how to do this. I've been doing this for years. And so, I really love it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have more side notes from Fugenbo. The casting of Mikyo is incredibly easy once you, quote, have the hang of it, end quote. The hand seals are used to focus the practitioner's mind, so they aren't technically required if the practitioner is highly skilled. Many agents can perform these seals with just their offhand, so they can keep their weapon in one hand. I've seen agents who have reached a level where they don't require any seals at all.
Which is not... You know, this is something that I... There's a couple parallels that I'd want to bring up when it comes to this, and the way magic use is treated in some games, and in some forms of fiction. This idea of always needing to do the incantation when it comes to doing the spell. Mm-hmm. If somebody's been doing it enough, they should be able to do it with just subconsciously. I remember in Orphan and a few other anime of its time, there was the concept of needing to speak in order to use sorcery. Mm. But the more extensive things were more of a guide for newbies. Somebody who's more experienced doesn't need the whole phrase. And as far as recent manga or anime that did something like that, the closest analog I can think of is Bleach.
There's even more recent, Mushoku Tensei.
Yeah, I haven't seen Mushoku Tensei, so
okay. Well, the main character is literally proves that incantations aren't necessary to be spoken. You can do everything mentally.
Mm-hmm. And if that seems ridiculous, keep in mind that people can play whole chess matches in just their head.
Well, the biggest thing is that many of the Japanese settings that have magic that has chance have this sort of layered tier system, I guess is the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. If you don't do the magic with any chant, you get a quick, really, really snappy reaction. It may not be as powerful as you want it to be. Mm-hmm. If you use a shortened incantation, it takes a little longer, but you get more strength. And if you use the full incantation, you get the full strength. And this has been around for years. This is a trope that they've been using for forever.
It's just that people who are very high level can do what would be a full strength for someone less experienced without needing it.
And my perfect example here is Lena Inverse. The Dragon Slave, when she fully chants the thing, is a nightmare of a spell. But even when she just says Dragon Slave and cast it like that, it still overwhelms everything. And of course, she also invents magic on the fly. Fucking Lena Inverse. But that's a different thing. But you're right. With Bleach, especially with both the sealing arts and the attack arts, if they just say the name of the attack art and its number, it's a weaker version, and if they use the full chant, it's a stronger version. All that fun stuff. There's just the East Asia in general tends to have this thing of, sure, you have the full structured thing, and if you use the full structured thing, you can draw out the deepest root depths of that thing. But you don't have to use the full structured thing to still get effects you want. And it might be actually, it might be a deficit if you need a weaker version because you don't want to outright kill whoever you're fighting or whatever. The weaker version may be more appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I love attention to detail.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Kuji-in are here, Cody, thank you. All of our Telsorian, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are great.
But next we have the conditions.
Mm-hmm.
In combat, characters may be afflicted with conditions that hinder them. These conditions are usually applied by attacks, Mikyo, or environmental hazards. Some conditions have an established way to end them, which always works unless otherwise stated by the effect that causes the condition. If the condition does not have this generic method, it will always be listed with a duration or requirement to end the condition in the text. The conditions you may encounter are as follows. Asleep/unconscious. You take a -2 penalty to awareness check. The asleep condition ends if you are touched, if any character within 30 feet fails a stealth check against your awareness check, or if a loud noise occurs. The unconscious condition ends after 1 hour. In both cases, any adjacent character can take an action to end this condition. See, blinded, you cannot see and take a -2 penalty on awareness checks, as well as attack and defense checks. Bleeding, you take 1 damage at the beginning of each of your turns, which is not lowered by armor. To end the bleeding condition, you or someone else must make an average medicine check, so 2. Burning, you take 2 damage at the beginning of each of your turns. To end the burning condition, you or another character must spend an action to put out the fire. Drained, you lower your maximum key reserve by 2 and must spend 2 actions to take a recovery action. The drain condition ends after 1 hour. Grappled, you cannot take movement actions, take a -1 penalty to all physical actions except attempts to end the grappled condition, and are dragged along with the grappling character when they move. To end the grappled condition, you must make a successful athletics or strength check against the grappler's melee or strength check. Grievously wounded. While grievously wounded, you take a -2 penalty to all actions and must spend 10 feet of movement for every 5 feet you move until you regain enough vitality to be above 3 points. Hidden. You can't interact with hidden items and characters. An enemy that is hidden grants a +2 bonus to physically interacting with you, but this makes them perceived. Hindered. You take a -1 penalty to athletics, focus, marksmanship, melee, and stealth checks. Additionally, you must spend 10 feet of movement for every 5 feet you move. Intoxicated. You take a -1 penalty to all actions. The intoxicated condition ends after 1 hour. When the character sobers up, they suffer the drained condition. Nauseated. You cannot ingest anything without vomiting, including drugs, and must take an average 2 endurance check at the beginning of each of your turns, or spend 1 action on that turn retching. To end the nauseated condition, you must make an average 2 endurance check. Obscured. You take a -1 penalty on awareness checks and checks you make to physically interact with an obscured item or character. Paralyzed, you're unable to take any actions, defend yourself, or speak. Perceived, you can clearly sense something that is perceived to you, and your interactions with it are not augmented. Pinned, you and the pinning character are unable to take any actions other than recovery actions, social actions, and skill actions used to escape the pin. If either of you are attacked, you can attempt to defend at a -2 penalty. A successful defense ends the pin regardless of who made it. Otherwise, to end the pin condition, you must make an athletics or strength check against the pinning character's strength or athletics check. And prone, you must spend 10 feet of movement for every 5 feet you move and take a -1 penalty to attack and defense checks. To end the prone condition, you must take a movement action.
Gotta spend your movement to stand up.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Where was it? Actually, any of them. So, you know how I said earlier that it seems like the skills are assigned to specific attributes?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the case, considering they've only ever mentioned skills and none of the attributes in any of these checks. So a stealth check will always be body stealth. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But with that, we move on to hazards, which are environmental hazards of a sort, I guess. Not all of them seem to be environmental in the same way, because we have 3 categories: environmental, mechanical, and magical. But starting with environmental hazards, collapses. Character steps onto a weak structure must make an athletics check at a DV set by the storyteller to step to safety, or leap to safety, excuse me. If they fail, they fall with the structure, suffer the prone condition, and take falling damage. If the character is underneath a collapsing structure, they must make a similar athletics check or take the amount of damage based on the size of the structure, usually ranging from 5 to 30, and be buried in rubble and considered grappled until they make a strength or athletics check at a DV set by the storyteller. Mm-hmm. Collapsing building hazards, that's actually, this is slowly becoming Ninja Gaiden. Decompression. If the pressurized area in space is breached, the air rushes out. Any character who fails a challenging 3 athletics check to grab a handhold is pulled 30 feet towards the hole at the beginning of each of their turns. Characters holding on to a structure must make a challenging 3 strength check at the beginning of each of their turns or lose their grip. Any character sucked all the way to the hole is sucked out into space, traveling the remaining distance into space. We're good at space people, Monk. Dense fog or heavy rain. While immersed in dense fog or heavy rain, a character is considered obscured to anyone outside the fog or rain, and they treat anything more than 25 feet from them as obscured. Dim light. While in an area of dim light, a character treats anything not shedding light as obscured. Electricity. When exposed to a powerful electrical current, the character takes 4 damage and is thrown backward 15 feet, suffering the prone condition. Extreme temperature. While in an area of extreme cold, a character suffers the hindered condition. While in an area of extreme heat, a character suffers the drained condition. So you're saying that we'll never be hindered. Got it. Falling. While falling, a character drops 100 feet at the beginning of each of their turns. When the character reaches the ground, they suffer the prone condition and take 2 damage per 5 feet falling. I mean, that's not that bad. For every 5 feet fallen, taking 2 damage. That's only 40 damage if you actually fall 100 feet. Now, that's probably enough to kill a low-ranked character. But
most of the characters that we saw have a vitality of 10.
Yeah. So don't fall very far. Or if you do, make sure you have a ninja tool to help you. Mm-hmm. Fire. While in an area in flames, everything is obscured by smoke. Additionally, if the character touches something flaming, they suffer the burning condition. No shit! Don't put your hand on the stove! Harmful fumes. While in harmful fumes, the character suffers the drained and nauseated conditions until they get a breath of fresh air. In thick fumes, the character may suffer the effects of suffocation. Suffocation is a later hazard, it is not a condition. High wind. While in an area of high wind, a character takes a -1 penalty to marksmanship checks. Additionally, a flying character must make a difficult 4 athletics check at the beginning of each of their turns, or be pushed 30 feet in the direction of the wind. You know, if you use that to your advantage. Radiation. While exposed to radiation, a character suffers the nauseated and drained conditions and takes 2 damage at the beginning of each of their turns, which is not lowered by armor. Oof. Rough terrain. When moving through rough terrain, a character takes a -1 penalty to athletics checks and attack and defense checks, and must spend 10 feet of movement for every 5 feet they move. Slippery surfaces. Any character who moves more than 10 feet or takes a melee attack action on a slippery surface must make a challenging 3 athletics check before they take the action, or automatically fail any required checks and suffer the prone condition. Space. While in the vacuum of space, a character is considered to be in an area of extreme cold, so they'd be extreme temperature hindered, and 0 gravity, which is a different hazard we'll look at. Additionally, the character suffers the effects of suffocation, which is the next hazard. Suffocation. A character can hold their breath for 1 minute. Once the character runs out of air, they take 1 damage at the beginning of each of their turns, which is not lowered by armor until they can get a breath. Total darkness. While in darkness, a character suffers the blind condition. Underwater. While in water, a character takes a -1 penalty to athletics and attack and defense checks and must spend 10 feet of their movement for every 5 feet they move. Additionally, when submerged in water, a character suffers the effects of suffocation. I assume like if you have like an air tank or something, you don't suffer suffocation, but that's just not mentioned here, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, 0 gravity. While in 0G, a character can move in 3 dimensions, but must push off a surface. Additionally, the character must make an average 2 endurance check when they enter the area of 0 gravity, or suffer the nauseated condition.
And then we have mechanical hazards. First is melee turret. This spring-loaded or electrical turret can be placed anywhere a person can stand or crouch. When a character moves into a space adjacent to the turret makes an attack with a melee weapon of the storyteller's choice. Attacks the character, forcing them to make a challenging 3 athletics check or be damaged by the weapon. A melee turret has 5 vitality. I know some are thinking of trying to imagine a melee version of engineer turrets. I'm thinking the good old swinging blades.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Nightingale floor. Oh, that's that's a deep cut for me.
Did you read Across the Nightingale Floor from the Tales of the Otori?
I read the whole quintet.
So did I. I actually purchased the entire quintet from the library when they were selling it because it was too worn to keep in stock. And then my mom gave them back to the library because they still had the library stickers on them. And so I had to go back to the library and be like, I bought those, here's the receipt.
Which, that was probably awkward.
It was, for both me and my mom. Especially when I explained to her that I had purchased those with my money.
Mm-hmm. But the Nightingale floor. This area of uneven, creaky floorboards can cover the entire floor in a hallway or a room. If a character steps on the Nightingale floor, it emits a loud noise which alerts any characters in the area. Remember, the floor is lava.
Well, Nightingale floors are fun.
Mm-hmm. Ranged turret. This spring-loaded or electrical turret can be placed anywhere a person could stand or crouch. When a character moves into a space within range of the turret's weapon and its line of sight, the turret makes an attack with a ranged weapon of the storyteller's choice, forcing them to make a challenging 3 athletics check or be damaged by the weapon. A ranged turret has 5 vitality. Hi, I'm an engineer. That means I solve problems.
Yep.
And security camera. This digital camera can be mounted on any wall. If a character enters the security camera's line of sight, they are caught on camera. Their actions are recorded and may be viewed by security personnel. A security camera has 1 vitality. Then we have the magical hazards, and a nice representation of one of them. The barrier talisman. This magical seal with 1 vitality can be placed on any wall, door, or window. Anytime a character strikes either side of the surface intending to damage it, the damage is reflected, causing them to take the amount of damage they would have dealt to the surface. So that's another reason that kicking the door in isn't a good idea.
Yep.
Dampening Talisman. This complex seal with 1 vitality can be placed on any surface, and its magic encompasses anything within 100 feet of itself. Within this area, all characters other than yokai cannot use ki from their ki reserve to perform Mikyo. That's going to be a fun hazard. Disruptive Talisman. This complex seal with 1 vitality can be placed on any surface, and its magic encompasses everything within 100 feet of itself. Within this area, an agent's receiver, projector, and recorder tattoos cease to work. Radio interference.
It's basically your chaff grenade.
Mm-hmm. Illusion Talisman. This magical seal with 1 vitality can be placed on any surface and projects an illusion decided by the crafter of the talisman when they place it. This illusion affects all senses and cannot be picked out as an illusion unless it is physically interacted with. Oh, that could be really funny if you want to put fake bridges in an area. Silencing Talisman. This magical seal with 1 vitality can be placed on any wall, door, or window. The talisman mutes all noise within a 50-foot radius. Nothing in this area can make sound, and every character in the area who enters the area cannot hear anything until they exit the area. That could be an interesting challenge in some adventures, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it really could.
Mm-hmm. So, lastly, we have the Swarming Talisman, which we do have an image representing what that's supposed to look like. This complex seal with 1 vitality can be placed on any surface, and its magic encompasses everything within 100 feet of itself. Within this area, the spirit world is filled with swarming eels born from Yomi's magic, which attack any character in the area, causing them to lower their ki by an additional amount equal to the roll of a die at the beginning of each of their turns.
Mana drain.
Yep.
Also, the kanji on that talisman is the kanji for swarm, and the way this talisman would be read is mure.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit of fun stuff there for everybody.
Yep. The next is maintaining the veil.
No. An agent's secondary goal in any mission is to maintain the veil, to keep the civilian population calm and quiet and keep local law enforcement from catching on. This is paramount to keeping the Veil War a secret, but it also makes the agent's jobs easier. After all, it's much harder to infiltrate an enemy hideout and assassinate a mythical monster when the police raid the buildings and start arresting people. In Shadowscar, we track the Veil by alert levels and breaches of the Veil. Alert levels represent the ambient tension in the area of an agent's mission, and breaches of the Veil represent moments when the Veil War has been witnessed and needs to be covered up. It's kind of like the Masquerade in Vampire, except more active.
Mm-hmm.
The alert levels are passive. Civilians are unaware that anything is wrong and are going about their business as usual. Attempts to influence civilians with social actions are unmodified, and the local law enforcement has yet to be alerted to anything. In general, when a team deploys to a mission location, it will begin at the passive alert level. When we have alert, civilians are aware that something is going on and are either avoiding the area or actively investigating. Any attempt at using social actions against a civilian suffers a -1 penalty unless the manipulating character is or seems to be part of law enforcement. The local law enforcement have been called, and in 1d2 or 1d6 plus times 2 minutes, a number of police officers, and they have examples for what a police officer will be NPC-wise on page 65, equal to the players plus 2, will arrive on the scene to investigate. These officers attempt to detain anyone who looks to be involved with the disturbance to question them. If anyone is doing anything illegal, they will try to arrest them and take them back to their headquarters. If the cops feel that the situation is getting out of hand, they will call for backup, raising the alert level to high alert. And high alert, civilians are panicking and are fleeing the area. Unless a character appeals to the civilian's need for safety and appears to be part of law enforcement, all attempts to convince a civilian of anything are at a -2 penalty. The local news crew will be arriving at the scene in 1d6 times 2 minutes to record the events for a later broadcast. The local law enforcement has sent a number of its special forces operatives, also an example on page 66, equal to the players to back up the law enforcement. They will arrive in 1d6 times 2 minutes. And we have raising the alert level. The alert level of a deployment zone generally begins at passive. The alert level rises if civilians witness openly carried weapons, a physical fight breaks out in a public space, civilians hear multiple loud weapons, an accident such as a car crash takes place. The alert level may continue to rise to high alert if there is a substantial threat to public safety, such as a major accident or a major crime. Lowering the alert level. The alert level can be lowered by the actions or inactions of the player. The following things can lower the alert level. If a person who called law enforcement calls off the investigation. If law enforcement arrives on the scene and finds nothing to investigate. And law enforcement resolves the situation. If law enforcement is convinced that the situation was fraudulent or has been resolved. Then we have breaches of the veil. While keeping track of the alert level, a Shadow Scar agent also has to look out for breaches of the veil. Anytime multiple civilians witness yokai, magic, or proof of the Veil War, a breach of the veil has occurred. Agency activities have been uncovered to the world at large, and now the agents must clear it up before an agency cleanup crew has to mount up. There are two kinds of breaches, minor and major. A minor breach of the veil, there's still a chance that you can cover it up without a cleanup crew getting involved. A minor breach might happen if one or more civilians sees an agent use Mikyo, but it's in a way that the agent could theoretically cover up. Additionally, sightings of humanoid yokai can count as minor breaches of the veil if it would be possible for the agent to cover it up. A group of witnesses less than 10 only counts as a breach of the veil if they're not taken care of, i.e. convinced of something else, recruited, or captured. Then there's major breaches. In a major breach, there is no way that an agent could pass the event off as a hoax. The secret is out, and now the players have to deal with the problem. In the event of a major breach, a cleanup crew is dispatched, and until they arrive in 10 minutes, the agents are given authorization to do anything they must to control the situation. Shit.
When it comes to the veil thing, I guess a very easy parallel I could make is the standard operating procedure that the Men in Black have to follow.
The MIB does very much sound like it, yeah.
Which, if I'm running Shadow Scar, I would be perfectly willing to give some certain characters a equivalent of the neuralizer.
A memory alteration seal?
Yeah.
If I ever run a session of Shadow Scar, I might run it like the old days of the Skip Foundation, where they have amnestics on tap, basically. And for those of you who don't understand what amnestics are, first of all, go read the old SCP entries, none of the new stuff. The new stuff is shit. And B, take the word amnesia and turn it into a drug, amnestics.
Mm-hmm. But then we have explosives. When a character throws an explosive, they can target a point within 50 feet. They must then make a marksmanship check at a DV set by the storyteller. If they succeed, the explosive lands where they wanted, and every character within 10 feet of the explosive must defend against the explosive's effect. If they fail, the explosive lands somewhere else within 50 feet. So we're not doing a random explosive diversion table? Or some sort of scattered diagram for once? Very nice.
Just somewhere within 50 feet. I'm guessing at the storyteller's discretion.
Yeah. Then self-sacrifice. A character in the area of an explosive can, instead of escaping the area of the explosion, throw themselves onto the explosive. In this case, that character suffers double the effects of the explosive, if applicable, and the other characters in the area are unaffected.
Basically, I would fall on a grenade.
Mm-hmm. Then we have poisoning. A vial of poison can be slipped into food or drink, and a character who consumes it is poisoned. A character who attempts to check a food or drink for poison must make a challenging 3 knowledge check to notice the poison. If a character is trying to poison a large quantity of food or drink, the storyteller can call for them to use multiple vials of poison. Alternatively, a vial of poison can be applied to a melee weapon, 3 ranged thrown weapons such as shuriken, or 3 units of non-firearm ammunition at the storyteller's discretion. When that weapon deals damage, the poison is applied. The poison remains potent until the weapon deals damage to a character. To affect a weapon with the two-handed trait, a character must use 2 vials. Damage from poison is never lowered by armor.
That's mean. Poison is mean.
Yeah. I know it would be tempting to think of like poisoned arrow or poisoned shuriken, but instead I'm going with those punch daggers that you saw in Blade 2 that were laced with EDTA. Or it was, I'd say laced with, it was pretty much an EDTA injector, and of course, in those movies, that is an anticoagulant that makes vampires overproduce blood until they pop.
Yep. They explode.
See, then we have cover. Cover acts as its own kind of health. To determine how much vitality a piece of cover has, compare the material and thickness to the object on the table. So it goes bulletproof glass, 6 per inch. Foliage, 1 per inch. Glass, 2 per inch. Metal, 10 per inch. Plaster, 1 per inch. Plastic, 2 per inch. Stone, 8 per inch. Wood, 3 per inch. And those same rules can be applied when trying to damage an item. And then we have firing into a crowd. If a character is in a crowd, they are considered obscured. Additionally, if a character gets no successes when trying to hit an obscured target within a crowd, their attack hits a random person in the crowd. They must deal damage to a person in the crowd determined by the storyteller. I also noted that there isn't a, we haven't seen a firing into melee kind of thing.
Yep.
Which I'm glad for.
Well, I'd shoot at melee range. That'd be fine.
What I mean is it's not being discouraged. Which, given that some characters I've played in spy fiction games are basically grammaton clerics and all but name, the whole not being able to fire into melee always annoyed me.
The whole reason firing into melee doesn't, or the whole not being able to fire into melee thing annoys me, is the places I have especially seen it are the places that insist on realism for certain things, and then ignore the realism of pulling out your pistol and putting it up against somebody's abdomen when you're in a fist fight with them.
Yeah, that's the reason. That's another reason why I don't care for the realism argument, because it's selectively applied.
Yeah, like most of the games I've played that don't have a restriction on firing into melee also avoid a lot of the realism traps. So I don't know if that's a corollary or something. I don't know.
It could be.
There's also that sidebar on using cover there, Monk.
Cover can also provide an interesting variation to combat or infiltration. Players could use cover to hide from surveillance as they move across a crowded courtyard, for instance. But it's equally likely they could wind up in a tough spot with an enemy sniper who keeps ducking back into cover, forcing the players to find a way to lure them out or get another angle on them stealthily. Since you can choose to split your movement in combat, it's easy to pop out of cover, attack, and then slip back into cover, forcing your enemy to prepare an action to shoot when you pop out. I also noticed that they didn't do like partial and total cover kind of rules.
It's probably just line of sight at that point. With that, we move on to Yokai's Common. The most dangerous weapon of the yokai are the Kamen, magical masks created by ogress witches called Hanya. We know what Hanya are. Anybody who's ever seen Majima's back tattoo knows what a Hanya is. That disguise a yokai's body as that of a human. During the 100 Years of Sorrow, Kamen were rare because there was little need for stealth. But things changed when the Veil War began, and now that Izanami's forces are spread across the mosaic, Kamen have become ubiquitous, with all active yokai possessing a custom-made Kamen. While wearing a Kamen, a yokai's form changes to a human version of themselves. They can change the height, weight, number of limbs, and the general structure of the yokai's body, and once a yokai has donned a Kamen, the only way to remove the disguise is to remove the Kamen or destroy it. Kamen have 2 vitality. However, while the yokai is wearing their common, their power is suppressed. They lower their ki reserve to 0 and lose access to any quirks that would only be possible based on their monstrous physiology. If a yokai's common is destroyed or removed, they immediately transform back into their true form. There's a section about wearing other common. While they are treasured possessions, common aren't unique to the yokai who own them, so in a pinch, a yokai can use one of its allies' common if need be. However, this will disguise the yokai as the human version of the yokai they borrowed the mask from instead of their own human disguise. So the common are custom made so that they become a human version of themselves, but they aren't restricted to just that yokai. Mm-hmm. That's really nice. Non-yokai wearing common. Typically, humans and other beings are unaffected by common. The common don't appear magical in any way and will not react to humans or animals. So if you get a yokai's mask, it's not going to do you any good. Just having it is, I guess, going to do something. And then common status. On top of acting as disguises, common are also symbols of status among yokai. The coloration of yokai's common markings can show how high-ranking they are in Izanami's army. The longest-ranking yokai have a common with brown markings. Lieutenants of Izanami's army have green markings, and the captains have blue markings. The highest-ranking yokai have a common with black markings, but these types of commons are a rare sight in the field. There are rumors that King Hametsu and his coven of Hanya wives have black common with red markings.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, and then wounds and death. In the life of an agent, it's inevitable that eventually you'll miscalculate a threat and suffer the consequences. When that day comes, you may not be lucky enough to survive it. Then we have vitality damage, which is basically health. When you're reduced to your last 3 points of vitality, you suffer the grievously wounded condition. If you lose 0, you a character who's at that has the option to either kill them or knock them unconscious. If the one who dealt the killing blow wants to keep their target alive, they can choose to knock that character out instead of killing them. This reduces the character to 1 vitality and causes them to suffer the asleep/unconscious condition. If the one who dealt the final blow chooses to kill the character dies and they become a wandering spirit. If a character loses their last point of vitality, the character who reduced them to 0 vitality has... this is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, being dead. It's a rite of passage and a mandatory part of Shadowscar training for every Shadowscar agent to be executed and resurrected. This is done so the agent can adapt to being a wandering spirit. Once a spirit passes into the spirit world, they must focus on keeping their form or they will fade away and be claimed by Yomi. But a well-trained spirit can still aid their team even after death, by negotiating with local kami in the spirit world or even spying on the enemy. Then true death. A wandering spirit has no vitality. Instead, their ki reserve determines how long they're able to remain in the spirit world. If at any point a wandering spirit has no ki points, they pass on beyond the spirit world into the clutches of Yomi. Once this happens, their spirit cannot be retrieved by any means. At the beginning of each of a wandering spirit's turns, they lower their current ki reserve by 1. Additionally, anytime a wandering spirit takes damage from a threat in the spirit world, they instead reduce their ki reserve by 1. Then we have spirits in the in-between. A wandering spirit that enters the in-between immediately passes on and suffers true death regardless of how many ki points they have left. And then
I believe the in-between is the space between worlds.
Mm-hmm. Then we have spirit lanterns. By taking an item action, a character with a spirit lantern can look through the lantern's window to see into the spirit world, and can spend another action to click down the top of the lantern, opening the window and sucking an adjacent wandering spirit into it. I ain't afraid of no ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Once a wandering spirit is within the lantern, they no longer lower their ki reserve at the beginning of their turn, and can be brought into the in-between without passing on. The wandering spirit can reside in the lantern indefinitely until someone opens it again, or the lantern breaks, and can be heard by anyone holding the lantern up to their ear.
Okay.
So
with that, we move on to... go ahead.
So death is not a total failure state. Good.
unless you run out of key or go into the in-between. I'm pretty sure, like I said, I'm pretty sure the in-between is the space between worlds that you have to travel through when going through the gates.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have healing. The process of healing during and after missions is often a complicated one. The agency has a number of tools that allow agents to recover quickly and be ready for the next mission as soon as possible, but all of these options are expensive and time-consuming. Depending on the situation, an agent in need of healing may seek a few different avenues of treatment. There's natural healing. A character regains 3 vitality at the beginning of every day. A character who is grievously wounded must either make an average 2 medicine check or have someone make the check on them to begin healing. Then there's the healing pools. In certain circumstances, agents who return from the field gravely wounded but must soon embark on another mission can requisition the use of the headquarters healing pools. Deep within the medical wing, Miko and Kanushi maintain 8 small pools filled with blessed spring water mixed with a combination of medicinal herbs. Visiting the healing pools takes an hour and heals all damage. After using the healing pools, an agent lowers their requisition points by 5 to a minimum of 0 until the end of their next mission. And we have resurrection, which is spelled incorrectly in the title, but spelled correctly everywhere else. The last form of healing is the most intensive. In the case that an agent is returned to headquarters in a spirit lantern, they can requisition their own resurrection. If the agent's body was retrieved, medics heal the body and then resettle the spirit. An agent resurrected in this manner lowers their requisition points by 10 to a minimum of 0 for the next mission. If a body was not recovered, a new body must be created. The agent who is resurrected lowers their requisition points by 20 to a minimum of 0 for the next mission. And there's healing between missions. Much like real life, once you get substantially hurt, it will take a while to get back on your feet. That's why missions are usually spaced out by a few days. This also gives the players time to have some downtime, interact with each other, interact with NPCs, or pursue personal quests. What it also does is allow you as the storyteller to set the pace of the game. By giving players plenty of time to rest and recuperate, you'll set a fairly lax pace, but if you want to crank up the tension, you can shrink that window of downtime by sending them on numerous missions one after the other. In this case, the players will feel the pressure and be more likely to use the healing pools. This provides an interesting quandary: spend their RP on getting healed or use them to get gear. And then another update from Fugenbo. I must warn you that this will be a long anecdote, but I find it to be one of the most humorous interactions I have had in my significant lifespan. It was 10 years ago when Medical Department Director Kimura was just Miyako. As Miyako and her co-teacher, Dr. Rivers, were running an emergency medical drill, I was watching from my perch as I do from time to time. The entire scene is a mess. Copious fake blood, gruesome wounds, and the students doing their best to triage. Eventually, my eye falls on one of the students who is tending to a patient with a crushed torso. To my considerable surprise, this young woman was up to her elbows in her patient's chest cavity. Seeing this, I simply had to learn more. So I alighted near the woman and inquired, "What are you doing? That seems quite counterproductive." The poor thing looks up at me and practically screams, "I can't find all of his bones!" After suppressing a rather childish giggle, I inquired as to what she meant, and learned she was searching for rib fragments and she was certain she was missing a few. I tried to reassure her, but my thoughts were scattered as I heard Miyako's voice from across the room. I swear to you, reader, that her pained words were echo in the catacombs of my mind until the moment of my death. "That's not a foreign object, that's his kidney."
I can see why.
Fugenbo is best girl. I don't care that he's not a girl.
How do you...
It's your turn, Monka.
While I try and process that, moving on to the communicator tattoos. When an agent finishes their training, they are marked with 3 magical tattoos, which allow them to communicate with allies and civilians. The tattoos are made with magically infused ink and are invisible to the naked eye. The tattoo can be seen under the light of a special lantern created by the Shadow Scar Agency, which causes the ink to fluoresce. So we have the receiver, which I believe that's the kanji for darkness.
I'm looking it up now, don't worry.
The first tattoo, placed on the inside of the ear, acts as a magical translator. allowing the agent to understand all written or spoken languages. Additionally, the tattoo allows an agent to hear the projected thoughts of any member of their strike team within the same world as though they were talking to them. This function only registers projected thoughts, meaning that an agent must use their projector tattoo to project the thought for their team to hear it. So, being in a completely silenced room isn't as much of a deal breaker.
No, that is not darkness, Monk. That is quite different from darkness, actually. That is Chiki, which is listen.
Alright, which makes more sense.
Yep, I'm looking up, like I said, I'm looking up all the kanji, except I have to do it by handwriting the kanji, so it may take me a couple moments.
Mm-hmm.
I know the last one is I. I'm pretty sure.
So, second is the projector. The second tattoo, placed on the lip of the tongue, translates the speech or writing of an agent into any known language, allowing them to be understood by anyone they encounter. Additionally, the tattoo allows an agent to project their thoughts into the minds of others in their strike team. Without the receiver tattoo, however, an agent cannot hear the thoughts projected from this tattoo. And then the third one is the recorder. The last tattoo is inked over the agent's left eye. Ugh. The recorder allows the agent's handler to see through their eyes and hear through their ears as long as they're in the same world. This also allows the agent's handler to record what they see and hear for later review.
But the second kanji is hanashi, which literally means talk. So, you know.
Mm-hmm. But then we have disabling the tattoos. All three tattoos only function while touching the agent's body. If an agent's right ear is cut off, their receiver tattoo is disabled. If their tongue is cut out, their projector tattoo is disabled. If an agent's receiver or projector tattoos are disabled, they must pick a number of languages equal to their mind statistic, which they spoke originally and can still understand. These remain in agents' known languages whenever their receiver or projector tattoos are disabled. The recorder tattoo can be disabled by removing the agent's left eye. In some cases, experienced yokai who take an agent hostage will attempt to remove their eye to avoid the agency seeing their operations. This is also why successful rogue agents, known as nukenin, can be recognized by their lack of a left eye.
Yeah. The three kanji are hiki for listen, hanashi for talk, and mi for see.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the kanji literally just are what they do.
Which is certainly fitting.
You know. Oh hey Monk, that picture of tearing a rift, that's a karasu tengu.
Yep.
Yep. But we have rift diving. In order to do their job, Shadowscar agents are required to travel between worlds. Unfortunately, this is something mortals were never meant to do. While the actual process of traversing the space between realities, known as the in-between by agents, isn't technically harmful to mortals, the scant amount of time an agent spends between realities is spent in one of the few places that a mortal being can truly witness the entirety of existence. And that isn't the only danger. While Kami can traverse the in-between with no issue, mortals have a much harder time controlling where they wind up. If a mortal were to traverse the in-between without one of the Kami's gates, they would be running the risk of slipping into the nearest possible world. This would be fine if it weren't for the fact that many of the surrounding worlds are uncharted, and thus the agent would theoretically have no way to return unless they managed to accurately rift dive back. To fix this problem, the Kami created a system of gates which link multiple worlds. Travel from one gate to another is instantaneous and safe. A character who knows the skill, or who knows the Rift Claw Mikio, which is only taught by members of the Hollow Eye Syndicate, can take an action and spend 3 key points to tear open a rift in reality. This rift remains open for 1 minute unless stabilized with rift anchor seals, which are commonly used by Yokai and Hollow Eye Syndicate members to create permanent portals. When the rift is created, the storyteller rolls a die and divides the result by 2 to see how far the desired world is from their current world. They must then visualize that in some way, for instance using hexes on a battle map. This is the number of times a character will have to successfully traverse the in-between to get to their destination. Anyone who looks into the rift can see the destination and how far away it is. Yeah, but traversing the in-between On each of a character's turns in the in-between, they can take their movement action to move forward or backward by 1 space. The character must make a challenging 3 focus check to control their movement. If they succeed, they move 1 space. If they fail this check, they start to drift off course. They don't move and must immediately make a difficult 4 resistance check to avoid witnessing existence, which will be described on page 41.
Mm-hmm.
This character's other actions can be used for any actions they normally would take. Other characters can take the help out action to make the initial focus check on the resulting resistance check easier for another character. Then we have reckless diving. When they take their turn, a character can take dash actions to move faster in the in-between. For each dash action used, the character moves 1 space further in the in-between. However, they also take a -1 penalty to their focus check for each dash action used. Then we have falling into the mosaic. If a character fails 3 focus checks or is in the in-between for more than 3 rounds, they are pulled into a random world determined by the storyteller.
Then we have yokai diving. Thanks to the influence of Yomi, the yokai are unaffected by witnessing existence, but still make focus checks to control their rift dive. And then after that we have controlled diving. In the earliest days of the agency, Shinobi developed a somewhat safer method of traversing the mosaic. By using their ki, these agents were able to create a tightrope from their current world to their destination. This method was forgotten after the creation of the gates, but the Hollow Eye Syndicate still uses it. By using a separate Mikyo, Spirit Link, which is a closely guarded secret of the Hollow Eye Syndicate, a character can create a tightrope that grants a +2 bonus to the focus checks required to traverse the in-between. And hang on, we got a bot. Let me take it.
I'm reporting it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Then we have witnessing existence. When a character fails a focus check to move through the in-between, they must immediately make a difficult 4 resistance check to avoid witnessing existence, as they temporarily lose control and drift through the void. If they succeed on this check, the character is able to shut their eyes in time to avoid seeing anything dangerous. However, if they fail this check, the character sees the entire mosaic from the outside. This momentary glance warps the character's mind as their brain struggles to comprehend what it's seeing. Immediately upon witnessing existence, a character has 2 options. They can try to look away and spare their mind, or they can attempt to understand what they are seeing. Ignoring the mosaic, the former option. To ignore what they see in the mosaic, a character must make a difficult 4 resistance or focus check. If they succeed, the character manages to ignore the mosaic long enough to tear their eyes away. They lose all other actions on their turn. If a character fails, they are too transfixed by the mosaic to look away, and their brain is forced to shut off their eyes in self-defense, causing them to suffer the blinded condition for 1 day. And making sense of the mosaic. The true nature of the mosaic is entirely ineffable, a reality too massive and too alien for humans to make sense of it, let alone truly explain it. To even begin to understand, one has to be a little bit crazy. In the full game of Shadowscar, you'll be able to try and decipher this mystery, but for now it's a bit too much to tackle. It is basically the I can see everything.
Huh.
But see, then we have the armory. This is where we're getting into the equipment part of things.
Yep. It's going to list out weapons, what their damage is, what their range is, what traits they have, and how many requisition points they have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need to actually go out of the armor.
Yeah.
And anything like that. And the traits are pretty, like, there are some that are very self-explanatory, such as concealable or ammunition. Loud or parry.
I do like twin weapon.
Yep. 2 separate weapons for the purposes of dual wielding, allowing you to make 2 attacks with a single attack action.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there's concealable and highly concealable. Highly concealable is just under any clothing instead of under specific clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive gives you a +2 bonus to the defend action, or you get a +2 bonus when using defend action. Grappling allows you to grapple and disarm within range. Harmless is when you strike with this weapon, you deal no damage and leave no visible wounds. Heavy strike means that anyone attempting to block it takes a -2 penalty to the melee check. Parrying means that when you're defending someone else to block the attack, when you use this weapon to block and attack the attacker, well, actually to yourself, excuse me, takes a -1 penalty to the next attack check against you. Precise gives you an aim action that you only take a -1 penalty to the subsequent attack check instead of -2 penalty. Wait a minute, what? Hold on. Scrolling up.
You think
Aim action was already a -1 penalty. I think that's a holdover. I think that's an artifact. I think it means when precise, aim action doesn't give you a penalty. Because up in aim action, the penalty's already -1. It isn't a -2.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Reach allows you to hit within 15 feet as if you were adjacent. Rending does an additional 2 damage against a piece of cover or an object. Two-handed means you have to use your hands, obviously. Unrelenting means that characters defending against the weapon can't use the melee skill to block it. We also have outfits like armor reduces damage by 1.
Mm-hmm.
A rebreather can help with hazards that do with breathing, such as harmful fumes. A security bar. Hey, Monk, now we're playing Siege.
Yes, we are.
Blocks off a door and makes it only only able to be opened from the opposite side with a difficult 4 strength check. Blinding powder does what it says on the tin. Tracking device. Which, if you make it, it's actually pretty hard to spot.
Mm-hmm.
We got some drugs and poisons that are mentioned as well. Flower stem elixir. Immediately upon ingesting the elixir, a character either regains 5 vitality or ends the effects of a poison. That's nice. And a snake scale solution. After being afflicted by this poison, a character takes 2 damage at the beginning of their turns until they make a difficult 4 endurance check, or somebody makes a difficult 4 medicine check with a first aid kit.
Mm-hmm. And
I like that while we're not going to go through it, I like that the sample adventure has grids and maps. It's really nice.
Yep. It also has something of a chase mechanic introduced in it. We're not going to go too far into it, but the fact that the full book might have a chase system is definitely nice.
Yeah. I want to read the back cover if I can, though.
Go ahead.
Okay, so long ago, the land of Nakatsukuni was plunged into chaos as the afterlife itself rebelled against the gods, using the body of the dead mother goddess Izanami as its host. In a desperate bid to avert the end, the gods tore a hole in reality, a long shadow scar. Izanami and her army of monstrous yokai were banished, but as peace came to Nakatsukuni, chaos reigned beyond the shadow scar. In banishing their enemy, the gods had unleashed monstrous creatures onto the many worlds beyond Nakatsukuni. To defend these worlds, the gods created the Shadowscar Agency, an organization of agents from many worlds trained in ninjutsu and armed with high-tech tools and magical artifacts. These agents travel across the mosaic to hunt down their adversaries and stop them from wreaking havoc. Shadowscar is a TTRPG inspired by Japanese mythology, the legends of ninja, anime like Fullmetal Alchemist, and stories of secret agents like Men in Black. I only called all of those. Mm-hmm. This quick start contains everything you need to begin the saga of the Green Demon, in which you will be tasked with hunting down the minions of the enigmatic but infamous smuggler known only as the Green Demon, in hopes of uncovering the power player's true identity. To continue the saga, keep your eyes open for the Mask of the Green Demon Jumpstart Kit, coming August 2024.
We obviously will not be covering the Jumpstart Kit. It is basically a if it's anything like the Jumpstart Kit in Cyberpunk Red, it's the equivalent of a box set.
Yep.
Sometimes quick starts are the equivalent of box sets, but this is not one of those cases. When we're talking a box set, we're talking the starter set kind of thing, where it is usually coming in a box. There's usually a rule set book and a GM book, usually with a bunch of either minis or cut or punch outs or something like that, and sometimes maps. Some of them
Yep.
are more extensive than others. There's some that only cover one somewhat lengthy module, and then there's some that do more.
Yeah.
And that's probably the vibe that it's going to go with. It's probably not going to be a freebie. I'd imagine it's probably going to cost like $20. It'll probably be on Drive Thru RPG, but the Jumpstart kit is not a priority.
I can see it being 15, maybe.
Oh.
20 is usually standard, but our Telsorian doesn't always follow the standards.
Yeah. In fact, let me see what how much the Jumpstart kit costs. Well, it's not on Amazon. Which means it's probably which means it on Drive Thru RPG the Jumpstart kit is, well, it was $30, but it's reduced to $10, which I'd say is a decent deal. I would normally say is a decent deal, but I think someone would be better served getting it just getting the full book. Apparently some spots still have copies of the Jumpstart kit for $30. So that's what I could see the physical copy going for. Like I said with the FF14 TTRPG, sometimes the price can be a deal breaker, and the amount that thing wanted was a little bit excessive for the content.
Exactly.
But I would say that Shadow Scar is definitely a slam dunk in terms of what it's doing. There are some questions that I do have. The chief among them is how advancement is going to work. I'm probably not going to find that out until maybe next year when we get the full core book.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get advancement until the core book.
I would imagine it's somewhat freeform.
I can see that.
But the way I envision it is that each of the clans have certain techniques, certain mikyo that are exclusive to them, and possibly some more common affairs.
Yeah.
That's the vibe that I'm getting. I could be dead wrong, but that everything that I've seen, that seems to be the most logical sense. I do think that there's going to be some people who are going to have an adjustment period when it comes to the game, because this is very much trying to emphasize the stealthy approach. So depending on your background, you're going to have an easier time. If you've got a background with stuff like Cyberpunk or Shadowrun, you're going to have the easiest time, because that whole planning is going to be pretty easy as it is for you. I'd honestly say people who have a background in World of Darkness type games are going to have the easiest time.
I see people in any game that has the more simplistic versions of the Dipole attribute skill combination are gonna have an easier time with it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh. At the same time, I think at the same time, something that something that I feel is going to be important is I really hope that the full book has some sort of mission creation system, or at least a random mission generator.
Mm.
Uh, Not exactly the same way that Cyberpunk and Shadowrun have them, but something in that ballpark.
Something comparable.
Yes.
Okay.
I I do think there's probably going to be an aside in the full book that the clans do not necessarily mean that that people within a clan are related to each other. They're essentially schools that are more opened up.
I could see that.
Uh, the big thing is making sure that you can have two people from the same clan who have different kits.
Mm.
Not completely different. There's gonna be some degree of overlap.
Well, I think a lot of the kit's going to change depending on World of Origin as well.
I'd say World of Origin and then the shared elements.
Mm.
Uh, I think I think that will be more or less covered. Um, when it comes to when it comes to the difficulty with how damage is dealt with, um, most most melee weapons don't seem to have a lower damage setup. Um, looking at the um, looking at the threats, there's a couple things that I have to bring up that I'm glad are there. One of them is a threat ranking system. Um,
Yep.
first, second, third, and fourth. Given the three tiers of Mechio that we saw earlier, I have a feeling that it's going to be using some sort of rank system. I wouldn't be surprised if um, there's something akin to the school ranks that you saw in L5R. Not in a 1-for-1, but something close. As you go up in ranks, there's certain techniques or the like that you get that are exclusive to certain clans. That's just my guess, and obviously, if by some miracle I get Cody on the show, which I highly doubt is going to happen,
Would be fun.
it would be fun. It would be interesting, even if I can just get Jay Gray back on. I haven't spoken with him in years. But these are just some potentials that I see based on observing what's present and knowing how a lot of games end up working. It'd be really amusing if each of the clans have their own specialized equipments. But there's a lot of diversity that can happen with this setup.
Mm.
And Nephinor's being Nephinor in the chat. But
he came late though. That's his own fault.
Mm-hmm. So he wins the Doku challenge.
Indeed.
But also, when it comes to the concept of the handler, I could easily see some possible way of having the GM act as both storyteller and the handler in that situation. So you don't need to have a GM PC because it's already built in.
Mm.
the or have multiple GMs if one so wishes to. But I'd say this is probably going to get on the higher end of my tier system when the time comes, and I am looking forward to seeing how it develops. But with that said, that is going to do it for this week. Obviously, tomorrow we're back on the grind with Sword World, and next week we're going to be returning to Gubat Bunwa because I don't think there's going to be another one of these surprises anytime soon, and wrapping up the very interesting discipline setups that we've seen from each faction. Even if some of them are a little more insane than others.
Indeed.
But that is a story for another night. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.